Tuesday night live. Guys, this is crazy. It's epic. You've seen the description. You've seen the thumbnail. It's been something I've been wanting to do for years. I think that's pretty much safe to say. But having the chance to pin these two world travelers down is another act of God's grace. And we're so thankful we were able to do so, because I know Jonathan's always on the road, and Nancy, I think, is getting ready to go parts unknown, and she can talk about that later. But yeah, this is going to be a pretty epic night. We're going to go through, Jonathan, just give everybody up to date. Jonathan has sent me and Nancy samples of KLuke. This will be Nancy's first time through it, I do believe, on the KLuke line, which will be great. Get her take on it. We'll go through that. I've got 2 giveaways tonight. We're going to give away a bottle of batch 15 bourbon, and we're going to give away, of course, a Steel Austin cast strength rye, one of the best in the world. So we're going to get into that. But yeah, guys, before we go through the chat, I know you're here. I don't want to hold everybody up. I'm going to bring people on. We've got Top Jimmy with us. Toby's got some of these things too. He's going to sample along with us. I know he's got the Armagnac and the Sauternes finish from Hello Again Whiskey Friends. But without any further ado, let's bring on the Nancy Cousin Fraley. Hello, Nancy. Cheers, cheers. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I need something to sip on since you are, I guess.
Well, hey, we got plenty of time. We'll get something going. Let's crack out. Look, I'll tell you what, let's see what Jonathan says. Let's bring Jonathan on. He's going to direct us through this. There is the king, the Jonathan. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
The owner, master blender of KLuke Whiskey Company. Cheers, my friend.
Pleasure to be here. Excited to finally get to spend an evening hanging out with Nancy, the world famous master blender. So
it's going to be fun hanging out together tonight and tasting through things. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too.
Yeah, definitely get at it. So we've got Toby in the background. I'll get Toby up in just a second. Jonathan, can you tell everybody what Nancy has? And I need to make sure I've got it here, because I know I've got them. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page and what we're going to taste through it, because people at home may have the same stuff if they probably do and want to do it with us. So
absolutely.
Well, I figured we could start off with a little 100 proof, kind of something a little softer to get our palates going here. So batch 5, 100 proof. That's our newest release. Just came out in the last couple of weeks. We're just working on getting it shipped out to all the markets right now.
There we go.
Yes, sir. That's the one.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into this.
And then the other samples you guys should both have. I've got batch 14, 15, and then the Liquor Barn Armagnac cask finished bourbon. If both of you should have those other 3 as well.
Yeah, the only 2. You know what? My apologies. Let me run down to my basement for a moment. Jonathan, are those the samples that you sent me a few months ago?
Yeah, whenever, I don't know when that last live stream was. We were talking back and forth through, I think the guy's 21090 or one of those. If you have those other 2 also. If not, we could just taste these 2. But I know Marty's been super excited about the Armagnac finish.
Oh, gosh, I am too. I'm pretty sure.
We're good.
I know where those are.
We're here. Yeah. Yeah, you said Armagnac. Did you see her legs take off? Yeah.
I know she's an Armagnac fan. So
yeah. Thank you, Dave, Tommy.
Yeah, I've got one of these bad boys over here too. Old school batch 39s.
Yeah, man. That's still, even though these have been around for a few years, man, these are still some of the prettiest labels that I remember, Jonathan, when these first came out. You see that on the shelf or behind the counter, your heart would skip a beat, just like, oh my God, there's a cigar blend, you know.
Obviously, I put a little hurting on this one.
All right,
there you go. Love it.
So that you all are tasting the Armagnac, the single barrel.
Yeah, I think we can.
You start with the 105.
You want to start with that? Yeah, I'll start with batch 500 proof.
Oh yeah, of course. Yep.
And then I figured we can kind of go. I figured the Armagnac kind of segues into the magic that you've been doing for the last decade, give or take. So
definitely, yeah. That's. I look forward to tasting that one again. Obviously. All right. So, I'm curious, Jonathan. Was there a reason that you chose 100 proof to this, or kind of what?
Yeah. So, for me, 100 proof is like the perfect, drinking neat over a cube of ice. I live in South Mississippi where it's summer about 10 months out of the year. Not so much this week. It's actually been pretty cool, but it's going to heat up here pretty quick. And to me, 100 proof bourbon, it's got just the right amount of balanced mouthfeel proof. You can have it straight. You can have it neat over a cube of ice, make a cocktail. I love paper planes. I actually use this batch 500 proof to batch up some paper plane cocktails on Sunday for Easter for us to enjoy with some barbecue outside by the pool. So,
wow, that's
what it knows is hotter than 100, Jonathan.
I wanted to make sure it had the mouthfeel and complexity. So I wanted something for people that love bourbon, something at a lower proof, but still have the body and texture and mouthfeel of a barrel strength bourbon. It's non-chill filtered, 7 to 9 year bourbon in the blend. Anywhere from 10% rye on the lowest on the rye side up to 36. So, averaging out, this is about 20% rye secondary grain in this blend.
It's really fruity. I like the like grilled white peach, some apricot on there. It's kind of the
marmalade.
Marmalade. Yeah, that's I get a lot of fruit on it.
And for me, that's something in bourbon that I love in whiskey, right? You want to have your fruit profile, you want to have your richness, your spice tones. To me, that's what makes it really exciting, right? When you get into the glass and they're like, well, wait a minute, now I get something a little bit different than the last time I got in here. And that's what keeps it really exciting. And I think it's just part of the magic of whiskey. There's just so much, or really wine and spirits in general, what you can pull out of the glass, both on aromatics and on the palate. So it makes it so much fun.
And Jonathan, I don't know if you're at liberty to say this, and I don't want to, if it's a question you'd prefer not to answer, I absolutely respect that. But I just wanted to ask it, is there a little bit of Bardstown in here?
So we source from 8 different distilleries between Kentucky and Indiana.
Okay.
So, Bardstown is where we do all of our bottling. We do all of our secondary aging there. And then we do buy distillate from them as well. We buy aged whiskey from them as one of our 8 partners. And I think for me, kind of following in your footsteps, right, a blending, finding these great, amazing separate components and then blending together in these beautiful layers. I tell people all the time, I think you're one of the best in the world at doing that. And, so for me to get to share a stream with you here that Marty put together is something really special because I just appreciate what you've done for the world of whiskey and your amazing career so far. So just trying to live up to, what people before me have done. And you're definitely one of the people at the forefront. So.
Oh, thank you. I'm really enjoying this. This is a good palate warmer. And, while we're at it, if you don't mind, just because this is probably one that I would sit out on my deck and have over a cube. Would you be offended if I put a little ice or just like one cube in there?
No, not at all.
See how
I'd love to see how you feel that opens it up and holds that mouthfeel and texture. Because again, that's something really important to me. If you're going to have a whiskey cut down in proof, it still has to have that body and mouthfeel and texture to it. And that's the difference between good whiskey and great whiskey, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, that really it does open it up, but I'm finding which I really like this that it really if anything it just kind of opens up the fruit just that much more to me.
I'll put a few drops of water on.
Probably that's Marty's package.
Here we go.
Probably just arrived. Sorry for my dog barking in the background.
It's your warning letting you know it arrived.
That's great.
That's fantastic. And it really works well with ice. Doesn't saponify or anything like that. It maintains its structural integrity, which I like.
Yeah, I just put a few drops of water with a pipette in mine, and you see that fruit and that kind of caramel toffee sweetness.
There's a consistency, Jonathan, with these that I feel like is like a almost not quite Werther's rich, but there's always a level of toffee on all these bourbons, I think, that stay consistent through the batches.
It's almost like I'm a fan of that, right?
Oh, well, I'm picking it up more now that it's opened up in the glass. Yep. Thank you guys for that. That's awesome. I'll get it on the wheel or the bottom here just a second.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying this one. We haven't produced our 100 proof, and it's been over 2.5 years, just as the barrel strength kind of took off. And Nancy, my whole operation, it's just my wife and I. So we're as small of a company as you can have. We're in 8 states distribution, a couple of online retailers, but we do everything ourselves. We've taken no outside money or funding or influence because I want to control every avenue of what we do. So it makes it a lot of work every day to make everything.
Yeah. I totally respect that. To it not be able to, or to it have to take outside money, I think is a dream. It has its own challenges.
For sure.
But not to have to worry about that and to just kind of be, it means you have a freedom that you usually don't really get. I'm seeing a note here from Jason and Mash and Drum. Really curious to hear if Nancy and Jonathan's blending styles are similar. I don't know if you want to speak to that first, or you want me to go.
It's up to you, Nancy. If you'd like me to go first, or if you'd like to, you're more than welcome to.
Go ahead, and I'll follow in. I'm just enjoying.
Glad to hear you enjoyed it. Yes, I'm a big fan of Jason. He tried our whiskeys early on, has been a big fan, a big proponent of turning people on to what we do. So for me, my background, I'll try to make kind of a shorter version, but I started working in restaurants at 16. And by the time I was 19, I started studying wine and worked in a fine dining restaurant with an amazing sommelier, and just was really, really fortunate early on in my career to try incredible wines from around the world and meet winemakers and host them at winemaker dinners. And that's what really led me down this path, and we had an amazing chef, incredible food in the restaurant. And I opened up my own retail store by the time I was 22, and I had my store for almost 20 years. And in the summer of 2014, I got to go to Four Roses and pick out one single barrel bourbon. I bought one barrel with Jim Rutledge, and I was just blown away. But not only the whiskey, but the people and the place, and the magic that transpires in the barrel. So for me, the next decade, I picked up more than 400 single barrels. And when we decided to start our own brand, rather than just doing single barrels, which would be a much easier path, I wanted to take more of a chef's approach, find the best base ingredients, and then blend them to a heightened experience. So I take notes on all the barrels we own, the hundreds of barrels that we own, and I rate everything by, is it fruit driven? Is it more like caramel toffee, dark chocolate? Is it more spice driven? And then from each main category has subcategories. Like in fruit, is it fresh fruit? Is it baked fruit? And I rate all the barrels that way. And then when I go to create a blend, I'm like, okay, I know here's the final dish. How do we get there? What's the journey? And I look at all my notes and I start just doing what makes sense on paper, which, as you know, doesn't always translate at all to what you envision it's going to taste like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then from here, everything is done by taste and blind tasting with my wife and I, and we adjust them. I adjust them one barrel at a time. We continue blending and tasting. And so we do everything by taste after that.
Yeah, that's great to kind of hear your background in that. And, for me, I've probably spoken about this before on the various shows. I kind of have a little bit more traditional training, if that makes sense, but more in the French brandy traditions. So, I was trained by a 10th generation cognac maker. Speaking of brandy, hey, Brandy. Sorry, that's my dog has been barking.
Okay. Didn't see that name coming.
Yeah. Imagine that.
I love it.
It'd be whiskey if she, wants a male dog. But yeah, that's my academic background had nothing to do with
Danielle
spirits. I mean, if outside of coming from a family of lawyers that love Jack Daniels.
Go get it.
But that's mine. And to answer Jason, mine is more informed by the French brandy tradition, or my background is very informed by that. So I always think I always say I make a whiskey the French way, since employing those old production techniques.
So do you focus more on terroir or lots, Nancy? Is that kind of do you focus? So being kind of more of like the French background as far as style, do you focus more on like terroir or lots over there? I mean, I know you probably have a lot of similarity crossovers to winemaking, with brandy, right? I mean, with the grape spirit for the background. So imagine terroir and certain lots and what the varietals do play a lot into blending over there.
Definitely, and also the type of warehouse that the spirit was aged in. So, and I do this a lot with the bourbons and other whiskeys I work with here in the States. Kind of like using barrels that have aged in like a humid, kind of cool environment, combining that maybe with some that have been a little bit hotter, drier, and such, and to be able to use those your warehouse as a tool, essentially, or your warehouses in shaping a spirit. So it's very informed by all that. But I definitely think about terroir, and and when I'm able to play with heirloom varietals, like at Still Austin, for instance, that's a lot of fun to me. Greg, hey, thank you, buddy. That's, by the way, just a quick shout out.
There's something Greg McDonald. What a man!
Up on my my porch right before Easter.
Yeah, Chris, we'll get to that for sure.
Yeah. I've seen some questions.
Yeah, this
that
is
one
a
from
couple
Chris
we can hit on. Like,
that's a fantastic question right there.
Yeah, a lot of different cooperages. Talking about staves, spirals, etc., barrel finish or doubles. This is both of these people's wheelhouse. So whoever wants to take it, have at it.
You can go, Nancy, if you want to start kind of talking about those different components and how that affects, the profile of what you get in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very particular about the cooperage that I use, or cooperages. Probably for just like a Still Austin or J. Henry and Sons or Magnus, or wherever I've worked with, I've always I'm kind of for the bread and butter stock. I like Independent Stave Company. I also did that when I was still at Wyoming Whiskey. We used Independent Stave. I usually like about a char 3 in general for maybe a place like Texas. And I know when I was at Wyoming Whiskey, I actually changed up, got a little bit of char 4s, just because we needed a little bit more the char in there to subtract some things that we had in the distillate. But I also like, I tend to like a very tight grain for American oak when I'm working with that. The oak I like tends to, when you're talking American oak, it tends to come from the Ozark area, Missouri. I'm not really much of a fan of oak from a little bit more northern climates or such, Minnesota and all that. when it comes to French oak, I'm very, very particular who I work with on that. I've got a Cooperage out in in France and the Cognac area. That's something I kind of keep proprietary. And just I have to admit, I've got my source, and I will say this: he's a mentor of mine, and he went to he was a master blender. He's retired now, and just kind of working with Cooperages, but he actually went to he's known my main mentor, Hubert Tremé-Robin, since they were 6 years old. They used to ride their bikes together in the town of Cognac to go to school, which I think is really cool. But I trust him implicitly with quality, so he's kind of like my eyes and ears over in France. I also work very closely with a French cooperage that's here in the United States. It's like about 30 minutes from my house, called a Tonellerie O. I've bought some really high-end American oak barrels from them, but when it comes to oak, I'm super. I like a long yard seasoning time. For American oak, maybe 18 to 24 months. For French oak, it has to at least be 36 to maybe 48 months of natural yard seasoning. And I could go on and on and on, but Jonathan, I'm going to let you talk about what I look for in that.
Yeah, so for me, I don't get to have as much experience as you do. Because you're more on the creative, on the front side of working with distilleries, as laying down new make, and I know you're such an instrumental part of so many projects, from the start, right? Where you're helping them out the gate, saying, okay, if you're doing this with distillate, this kind of oak makes more sense, or you're in this climate, because you're all over the country in a vast array of different places. Where mine is much more traditional. We only source from Kentucky and Indiana, and because we're already buying things that are aged, it's only what we get to do kind of with secondary aging. I really like Kelvin Cooperage for their toasting barrels. We use their toasted barrels. We do, we're now doing medium toast barrels, heavy toast heads, no additional char, because I don't want to add any more wood spice. I just want to add that, that kind of caramelized sugar element to whiskeys and richness and mouthfeel, but don't want to add any more wood spice. So I don't get to play around nearly as much as you do. As far as terroir of oak, and kind of that making those decisions early on in the whiskey. For me, more mine is coming down to tasting what I've got to work with as far as different ages and just magic happens in each barrel. So I don't get to do near as much of the front end as you do, but I know there's an incredible amount of thought to that process that goes into every distillery, as far as what whiskeys and what types of oak, where you're going to age them out in the warehouses, and what does that look like, 3, 5, 7, 10, 12 years down the road? And I think it's really important, how much consumer education you do, because I don't think the average person understands that there are literally 1,000 variables to get from, the corn growing in the field to what you end up with in the bottle. I don't think people understand, you hear about temperature fluctuation warehouses, but until you go there and you go from the first floor to, the top floor in a 7-story warehouse, you can't really appreciate that 25-degree temperature swing from the bottom to the top, until you experience it, right? Or you taste whiskey from interior to exterior. So it's really amazing, what this whiskey goes through in its life cycle to end up with what you get in the glass at the end. So,
it's really intriguing. I've been interested in the chemistry and physiology of oak for probably about 16, 17 years. I've been studying that pretty much in depth. But you could geek out about this stuff all day. Yeah, just say a quick thing that I think people will kind of enjoy. I don't know if I can just quickly talk about the difference between a very tight grain versus like a coarse grain oak. Would that be okay just to take a minute or two just to
yeah, that kind of Toby's going to follow. Yeah, I got you. Go.
Okay.
100%.
So when you're looking for oak, kind of trying to find what you want to work with, a very tight grain oak will tend to it comes from very poor soil conditions with the overhead, and the light conditions are very poor, so it grows very slowly. And what you get from that, it has more extractives than a coarser grain oak, but it releases them a lot more slowly. So when you're looking to buy oak or barrels, you're kind of where you get the most flavor is from what we call the early wood ring in the oak, and that's where that only grows in the springtime. So that's where you get the majority of your flavor. The vanillins and all, which will turn into vanilla flavors and such. The rest of the year is what you call the late wood. So that's kind of the grains in that are what comprises most of the oak. The opposite is true with the very coarse oak, like a French oak, like what people tend to think with cognac barrels, for example. Quercus robur, also known as Limousin oak, has very coarse grain. So it's a coarse grain requires a very rich soil to grow. And those trees just shoot up in the air, and they kind of or like the top of the canopy in the forest. They're getting a lot of sunlight and such too. So with the very coarse grain, you get about 10 times the amount of tannin that you get from a very tight grain. You don't get as many extractives, but the issue is that because the grain is so coarse, you get extractives very fast. So that's when people use French oak, and they're for bourbon, for example, if you wanted to put lay down your white dog, and that would be a problem because you're getting those tannins and such so fast. So anyway, just kind of a fun geeky thing to think about oak tightness or good grain tightness. But anyway.
I tell people you could spend your whole life studying each separate component. You could never learn all there is to know about it.
Exactly.
Every time I go to Kentucky and I go to places that have, these great older bourbon collections, and you try stuff, say pre-1970, you talk about the mouthfeel and texture difference in these low-proof bourbons. We always talk about a lot of that probably comes from the tightness of the oak grain, because the trees were able to grow, much older before the barrels were made. Right. So you just get a different mouthfeel and texture, even though most of those bourbons are only 86 to 90 proof. Totally different mouthfeel from today's bourbons. And, some of it could be cleanliness of, the warehouses, distillery operations, and different things, right? You probably had different, I would imagine you had some wild yeast fermentation things going on in there that were, and nowadays you see so much more controlled environment whiskey when you think about, pre-1980.
Right, and the just what you were saying too, Jonathan, about the entry proof, those lower entry proofs. It was in 1962 when there was a industries circular that was released by what's now the TTB that set what we think of today as the legal definition of bourbon. Where you can go in. Enter into the barrel no higher than 125. Between 1933 and 1962, you actually had a floor, a limit of you couldn't enter into the barrel but below a certain strength, and you also couldn't go above 110. So you had both a floor and a ceiling, where today we only have the ceiling, and it's only that high because at 125 in order to save money, and warehousing cost in any way. But I'm really intrigued by what we've got going next. My palate is feels sufficiently warmed up. If you want to.
Sure. Where do you want to head to? Do you want to? I don't know if you want to taste a few more of mine. I mean, I've got some of your stuff pulled out here too. Whatever.
However you want to do it. I was looking at batch 15, but I also have a batch 14.
I've got them both. What do you tell us?
If you want to try them both, we could do them side by side, or if you want to just jump into 15, the new one. I'm not sure how many other things. Like I said, I've got that 10th anniversary Wyoming whiskey, and I've got a Magnus cigar blend. I got a couple things from the guys at 21090. I've got their still Austin rye pick that was 116 proof, and I've got a little splash of that there, the Tanager.
Yeah.
So I've got a few of your things too. So if you want to skip 14 and go to 15, and then maybe do the Armagnac, and then we could get into some of your fun things.
Yeah. Maybe we could just like trade off or something.
Oh, yeah.
Do one of mine, one of yours, one of mine.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And well, I was going to say, which Tanager do you have there?
They didn't put it on here, but I got this. This would have been the last year's release.
Okay.
It doesn't say
25. Sorry.
Yeah, you want to do the
Wyoming whiskey
103.4? That's what I've got.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great place to start.
Yeah. So that.
Yeah, guys, feel free to channels, post your links. You're welcome to do that here, man. Everybody's welcome. The mash and drum or your French oak barrels tight or coarse grained? I bet they're.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. If they're tight grained, then that would be Quercus cessiflora, which is it's an oak that grows in France and other parts of Europe, but it's used mostly by the wine industry. But it is a very tight grain. And Jason, you're using a fine grain. Then it's a Quercus cessiflora. Then, well, anyway, he'll write his answer on it.
Barrel King recently purchased a lot of French oak barrels for him to play with as he's doing some of his blends.
Oh, well, that's I saw a question on barrel size. How does that change due to barrel size? I'm assuming that means extractives.
Sorry.
Just I want to make sure I answer, get the question right.
Right here.
How does
you talking about the grain? Is that the question? Lip service, like just a grain change because of barrel size, or
probably time, maybe, or flavor profile, barrel size.
And how would it affect what how would what size barrel you've made using that type of stave? A smaller barrel, a larger barrel. How might it be affected? I guess is maybe the question.
Okay. Well, a small barrel with very coarse grain is going to give over its tannins and other extractives very, very quickly. And so just kind of a little rant about small barrels here for a moment, if I may, but the thing with smaller cask is that your how shall I say this? Your extraction rate is always going to exceed your oxidation rate. So you're going to have a very fast extraction of tannins and caramelized wood sugars and vanillins and other wood products. But the problem is that you don't really have enough time for those to oxidize properly in the cask, which is what you get from a large or like a 53-gallon standard barrel, or like in Texas, we're going more towards 63-gallon, 59 to to 63, which is, you know, more what you want. But and if you're looking to age something over a long term, then like a larger barrel with maybe a tighter grain, so you don't get all the extractives up front. You know, it's more released over time. I don't know if that then answers the question, but I'll throw it back out there to you, Jonathan, as well.
You know, I think the other thing too you have to consider is, you know, where are you aging at, right? I mean, if you're in it, like you said, if you're somewhere hot like Texas compared to, you know, somewhere like Kentucky or Indiana, or, you know, the East Coast like New York, I mean, there's so many variables. And again, I think that's what makes it so hard, like trying to study this is there's so many variables between heat and time and temperature and extraction rates and barrel size, types of wood. And I think it really comes down to, you know, you have to believe in your palate and know what you like. And as you're tasting through things, trying to figure that out, obviously, you know, on the side when you're upfront trying to make all those decisions. But I think you really need some time to tell, right? I mean, you know, based off kind of the science and you know kind of what works per region, but until you really get into tasting that whiskey, people always ask me, you know, do we have any intents to distill down the road? And I'm like, absolutely not. That's a whole nother lifetime that, you know, I don't have any interest in getting into, because again, going back to kind of my chef reference, you know, chef doesn't raise their own cattle or grow their own produce. They go out, they source from the very best places, the people that do it best. And then they use, you know, their palate understanding of those different flavors, components to build something truly special and exciting. And that's all I want to do. You know, again, I know you could study your whole life. You could spend studying just wood. You know, you talked about canopy management with oak trees. I got to go out to Oregon probably, I don't even know, 15 years ago to Pinot Camp, and they talked a lot about canopy management. We went out there in late June. It happened to get to 98, 99 degrees. And they were saying, had they cut back canopies, you know, already, that everything would have got fried, you know, all the grapes would have just got cooked in the sun. You had to have that canopy to protect them. And so again, I think it's really amazing. The more you dive into studying, you know, wine and whiskey, any spirit from around the world, you could just spend your whole life just continuing down that rabbit hole of studying it and never learn all the why, you know, the reasons, the magic.
Well, one of the things about wine too, because I was a wino before I was a, you know, bourbon enthusiast, is that one of the best things about wine is if you like to learn, wine reinvents itself every 12 months because the new vintages come out, you know, every year, and you have to relearn, you know, your favorite winery this year may not be your favorite winery the next year and that. But I had a question. I know, Nancy, you said you're very particular about where in France you source, you know, your French oak. But I forget, you said you were partial to a particular barrel made not too far from your house. Can you remind me what that was?
Yeah, that's Tonellerie O, and it's it's spelled with an O with the little like the thing on top.
That's a fine grain, if I remember right. It's a fine grain. It's a fine grain, a tight grain, you know, oak as well. So how would you compare Tonellerie O, your barrel of choice from France, and Seguin Moreau from Northern California? How would you characterize those three?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I would consider Seguin Moreau to be up there in you know, one of the, you know, they're a great cooperage as well, and you know, Magnus. We currently have some barrels, Seguin Moreau barrels that have, or you know, that have gone into the single barrel program. The thing about and they have a cooperage that's really close here. Obviously to my house, probably like an hour away or 45 minutes away, as opposed to just 30. It's been a long time since I've gone to visit that cooperage. I'm probably like,
get on with it.
Yeah.
Come on. No, I'm kidding with you. No, I mean, like, you need to get back there. Is what I'm saying.
but
Especially that part of the country.
I
No,
will
I didn't mean to cut you off. That's not what I meant. I want to keep talking. No, keep talking.
that
We'll just kick him out of here for a few minutes. You know, he's misbehaving. Sorry.
Yeah, things I like about the cooperage that I work with in France is they can actually measure content or the tannin content in every stave.
Wow.
Well,
So I mean, the level of technology that they've been able to accomplish there is just kind of I think second to none right now.
wow.
That's who I get all my finishing casks through for the more or less. Yeah, I mean, just the level of quality is just kind of unparalleled. But that said, here in the States, we've got some really good cooperages. I know, Jonathan, you're going to hate me for this, but I'm not a fan of Kelvin's. So
Well, that's okay. You didn't mention. I really like their toasting process. And their toasted barrels. I'm a big fan of them.
Yeah, sure.
But again, I mean, everything is something different. I mean, there's so much out there. Like I tell people, you could, if you walk into a winery and you look, I mean, there's tons of different types of barrels in there. Like I said, that's a whole nother lifetime you could spend studying is just oak and terroir and how that imparts the wine or whiskey, right? I mean, it's just amazing. And I haven't had a chance to go overseas. I would love to go over to France, to go to Cognac and Armagnac and like just see. You think about how long the same families there have been making the same products, how many, more generations we've been a country. It's really incredible. And I know you go back to
a bit longer. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I was going to be there next month, but that kind of got canceled. But I'll be in the UK next month instead. So it's all good.
When you said that, I knew you were going, but I didn't know. I thought when you said canceled, I thought that was what got canceled. Okay, good.
Yeah, no, just the
going, but different. Okay,
for the moment.
And you get travel all over the world, so I'm sure it's amazing to see what similarities and differences there are in production techniques from all over. In the common ground, and then everybody has their own way of what they believe is the special way, the right way of doing something. And again, I don't think there's really a wrong or right way. It's what you believe in, what you believe works for your products, and there's so much out there that changes.
Yeah, there's a world full of production techniques where they've been doing things for a long time, and it's to me just really interesting to go study those techniques and see what works. Not everything works for to take back home, but there are some really interesting things to.
Jonathan, let me ask you a question real quick, Toby, because it's kind of what we're about to get into and kind of what we're talking about. Jonathan, when you were doing, your bourbon blends, your 10-barrel blends, and you started doing your toasted barrels and your ryes, were you always wanting to do some finished barrels, or was that something that came later for you that you were like, okay, I'm ready to do some finished barrels. Let's see what we can get our hands on. Let's test the waters, or were you just like, okay, I'm doing this, or did you just kind of want to see where it led? Because I mean, like I said, you had this down pretty solid when you started the finished barrels. So
for me, I mean, I always have all sorts of wild ideas, things I want to do, and that's why Jennifer's in charge of the operation, the finances, everything. Make sure to keep me in line, and because I'm like, we could do this and this, and she's like, how about you just focus on what we're already signed up to do? And I'm like, okay, you're probably right.
Okay,
but for me, it really comes down to things I've gotten to experience over my, 10, 12, 14 career of studying whiskey and tasting barrels, fun things I've gotten to try with barrel craft spirits, right? I mean, you look at something like, I've had this, batch 39 Magnus for, I don't know how many years now. It was the first batch we ever got here in Mississippi at my retail store when I had it. And I just made sure to drink other people's and save mine. And so for me, all of our secondary casks were things I loved, right? Armagnac, sherry, port casks. I look up here on my shelf of my barrel picks and things I picked from around the world in different secondary casks. And basically that's what we went and laid down some whiskey in those and just kind of some fun, just different projects. I just got back from Honduras, so obviously everyone always asks when I'm going to do a cigar blend. Because I think people that follow me online know I certainly enjoy my cigars, and I went to Nicaragua the last 2 years. And I always tell everyone the same thing. It's going to take me time, but what you've done here with the Magnus Cigar Blend, these old world casks, and this beautiful balanced layered whiskey that you can just take that journey through the whiskey as you have the cigar, right? As the cigar evolves, the whiskey evolves. Like, that's what I want to do. And I'm not exactly sure yet, like, what that cask makeup will be. Mm-hmm. And part of us doing these separate single barrels with different casks now gives me a chance to say, okay, here are KLuke blends in these different barrels. I can start playing with those and trying to figure out, like, eventually kind of what that project will look like. So hopefully here in the next year or so, we'll get that done. But
very cool. Yeah, when we taste a little bit of a JMCB later, I wouldn't mind getting back to that conversation if you're good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because it's funny, having had a chance to interact with Nancy quite a bit in the last year. I know that she's actually kind of trying to move away from, whiskey's finish in a secondary spirit, and that's where Tanninger came from. And so, for you, Jonathan, it might be something to think about. I mean, there's so many people out there doing cigar blends where they're just throwing every, Armagnac, Cognac, they're throwing every yak under the sun into their blend, whereas Tanninger has none of that. It's a process.
Well, and that's part of my other issue with it is, because to me, when I think of a cigar blend, this is what I think of, right? It's something that is made to complement going with tobacco. It's got those flavors and notes and layers to it. And I think it kind of got so trendy over the last, say, 5 years, right? Where you could just throw anything together and call it a cigar blend. I'm like, I know that's not what you intended, right? Being a fan of cigars and, pipe tobacco. So for me, it's like, we talk about not even calling anything to do with cigar. And then but I think now we're kind of getting away from all those other crazy exploratory cigar finishes out there. I've started to see that kind of dying down the last 6 months. I'm hoping by the time we get around to it, again, I want something to sit, enjoy, that's built to go with cigars, not because it's trendy, but because I enjoy cigars and I want to sit and have a spirit that's tailored to go with it. And we may do some Cabernet from Keenan blended in there. I really don't know. I've really got to sit. I mean, it's going to take me probably a year of research and development trying to figure that out.
If I can give you a little advice, and
Sure.
I was wanting to talk about it later, but since we seem to be going that direction, I'm just a little poor with that. But I was going to say, kind of the whole key to it is, I think I've been talking about this lately with the JMCB. I kind of created a Frankenstein sense. I never meant for the whole finishing thing to kind of be what it's about. The only reason I finished that with say like Armagnac and I was like a tiny little bit of Cognac and sherry was because I was looking for fatty acids, like what and because you come from a food and wine background, I know you can appreciate this. Just a little food for thought. It's a lot more about like the fatty acids from the wine that I was looking for, and not to do a cask finish per se, if that makes sense. And from like in a your
mouthfeel and that
and you get those oxidized esters of the fatty acids that turn to that rancio note, that prize note that's very nutty and has all those dark dried fruit and tobacco. And it also gives enough fat for the mouthfeel. So just FYI, if you are going to do some kind of cigar blend in the future, I would suggest kind of looking to back to your wine background and think about fatty acids and that kind of thing, because that's really where it all starts. It's about the fatty acids. Yeah.
You had me at fatty.
Yeah. If I can
take drugs,
if I can risk,
but I love fatty.
If I can risk totally taking the conversation a different direction, but I think it's one that everybody would like maybe to, when you both are at different distilleries where you source from. What are some of the key characteristics you're looking for in a barrel that you want to source and bring back and then blend? Maybe what are the few that you're looking for? Maybe what is one or two characteristics you've never found, but someday you're going to find it? And then what are a couple that you avoid like the plague?
Well, Toby, I'm glad you asked that. So basically, for me, what I do is go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Whoever wants to take it.
Jonathan, you go first.
Yeah.
Sure. So for me, it's kind of more of like there's certain distilleries I've been working with. Even if it's just picking out single barrels back from my retail store before I started KLuke, there were certain distilleries that have certain inherent flavor profiles all the time, right? Whether it be dark cherry or more spice driven or more like, say, blackberry floral. So for me, like I'm looking for barrels that highlight those specific notes that I love about that particular distillery. Like I'm looking for what I'm always trying to do when I'm buying barrels. I'm trying to build my spice cabinet, right? So when I sit down and start rating my barrels, I'm looking for this huge, wide spectrum of flavor profiles. That's why we source from so many distilleries and have so many different mash bills and ages. I always try and explain to people, like, it's so hard to say you just absolutely love or hate a certain distillery or a certain mash bill or a certain proof or certain anything. I'm like, but there's so many variations of that in different contexts that if you just taste them blind and you went in unbiased and you don't think about any of those things, you just focus on the whiskey in the glass, you'd have a different mindset. So I'm looking for certain flavor profiles that I know that I've come to love from each distillery the past decade plus. So that's what I'm looking for to add to my wheelhouse each time I'm picking up barrels.
So, yeah, and to speak to that question, for the distilleries where I do source, like Joseph Magnus or 7-3 distillery out of New Orleans, the first thing I'll do is, if I want to work with a certain, a source of the whiskey, I want to have about 2 or 3 samples from a certain lots of years I'm looking at, and I also in that I try when possible to kind of get like an upper floor versus a lower floor and middle, just to kind of see how it's all maturing. And the first thing I look at, and that is to see if I find any inherent faults, if there are any, it's one thing if it's just like an off, barrel, that's the problem in the barrel. But what I'm usually looking for first, before I just kind of look at flavor, like the positive flavors, I'm looking at the negative issues. And, if there's any kind of fermentation or distillation issues in that particular lot, if I see that over 2 or 3 samples, then okay, I want to maybe go a few lots down the road, maybe from a March distillation to a June distillation, or kind of just kind of see if the problem was corrected. So that's always the first thing I'm looking for. Were there any any moldy grains, kind of like a mycotoxin kind of issues, or distillation faults, problems with the fermentation, all that. Then I look, assuming all that is fine, then I start looking at the positive attributes that I want. But making sure that I'm working with quality distillate is first and foremost kind of what I'm looking for. And then, if I see that in a certain lot, that the lot in general is really nice, and I kind of want to see what the variation is in that stock. It's admittedly a lot easier when I'm working, with, say, Still Austin, where everything is
controlled. Yeah.
Right? Every aspect is controlled, and I'm part of that control. too. It makes things a heck of a lot easier. But anyway, yeah, that's enough.
There's a good question for both of you, because I know Jonathan. I know his love for cigars, and mine and Toby, all of us on screen. I'm kind of interested in seeing what both of you say to this question from the bourbon engineer.
Oh, okay. So with the cigar blend,
That's an awesome question.
I do that right up front. So and I, by the way, I just got a new pipe last week. I treated myself to a Dunhill after 37 years of smoking a pipe. So I'm loving it. I'm probably going to go enjoy a little bit of this one tonight. But anyway, that said, I like to do that immediately and to just kind of know how it's going to pair with the cigar. I tend to, or my pipe as well. If I'm doing a cigar, so whether it's Tanager or just a Magnus cigar blend, I'm usually not pairing it to any particular brand, but I tend to kind of go like with a medium bodied cigar, something that I think is going to have like the broadest appeal. Yeah. And for with my pipe, which I have to admit, more often than not, I will probably pair something to my pipe just because I love smoking a pipe. But I do the cigars. I've been smoking those for 26 years now, and not quite as long as the pipe, but but yeah, it'll usually be some sort of medium bodied cigar, just something with a little bit more broader appeal. I hope that answers the question.
I think when you have it right too, like to me at least, when I'm sitting enjoying the whiskey, I'm enjoying the cigar. Like I was saying earlier, what I always enjoyed about your cigar blend, especially these early on batches like this 39 that I've got here, is there's so many layers to the whiskey that as you're smoking through the cigar, right? Because it's a cigar, the thirds change. The whiskey does as well. It evolves and opens up, and they should complement each other. Everything has to be in balance. You don't want the whiskey to overwhelm the cigar, and vice versa. You don't want the cigar to overwhelm it. It's all about trying to find that beautiful, exciting balance, because that makes the whole experience. And next thing you know, you're out there for an hour relaxing, right, enjoying a cigar, enjoying the whiskey, and especially if you can get friends over and sit and enjoy that experience. Like, to me, that's what it's all about. So obviously that's something you do on your own as you work on the whiskeys, but when you can just sit and enjoy that experience, and the next thing you know, it's over, and you're like, wow, where did all the time go? Because you just had such a good time enjoying that cigar and the whiskey, and maybe the company, and then you have something really special. So,
Jonathan, I'm going to have to send you more of the recent batches that are. I think these are arguably better than around batch 39 or so. The ones I've got out right now are arguably the closest that they've been to the original 14 batches, like in the past 8 or 9 years. And with the ages, just keep creeping up. I did have a quick point or the thing I wanted to say. Something that I mean, whether it's a cigar blend or anything I'm making that's really high end or special, a big component for me is, not to just do like my lab work and, during the daytime to, test things. If it doesn't work out on my deck at the end of the day, and then it's a blend that's not going to work. I kind of start my day with my professional lens on, if that makes sense, and then I end my day, or on a weekend when I'm not working, I just try and go out and sit on my deck and just think as a connoisseur and not a producer, if that makes sense.
We do the same thing. We taste at different times of day, because as your mood changes, your palate inherently is going to change, and your outlook on the whiskey. So yeah, like you said, that kind of 9 to 5, you're focused on But you know as well as I do, when you love the products, right? And whether it's my whiskey or yours or any of the other great people I've met, I want to be able to sit outside and enjoy it, whether it's by myself, with Jennifer, with my friends, and have that whole experience. And I think that's a very important thing as you're tasting the whiskey and working on building out these expressions. I couldn't agree with you more on that aspect.
Is it me, or is anybody else jealous that Nancy's workday just means that she's smoking and drinking out on her deck in Southern California? I mean,
Northern California.
it's 72 and sunny. You know, I mean, what a tough gig.
I'll tell you, it's harder than you think, though. Do it day in and day out.
It is.
Nancy, I got to ask, because
Yep.
Nancy, I'm a pipe smoker, and I want to know what you already said. You like kind of medium-bodied cigars.
Okay.
What type of pipe tobacco do you gravitate towards? Are you doing any of the flavored stuff, or are you staying away from flavored and just kind of doing different, non-flavored, blends?
I like non-flavored, like more of like a okay, that's batch 15.
15.
Okay, perfect. I got
I've
that.
got it beside the 14 now. I've been sipping it for about 20 minutes beside the 14.
I tend to like the kind of like in the English Cavendish style of where no other things are added. It's like any
Right.
sweetness you get is more natural.
Right.
I've experimented in my 37 years of pipe smoking, with all kinds of stuff, and some of the
Easy.
stuff that has like a added sweetener or this and that.
Yeah.
I wake up feeling like hell the next day. I don't want that. I just want to have a nice smoke, and it just be I can work the next day. I'm not feeling really bad.
Okay, so you're like me. I prefer, basically different versions of an English blend.
Yes.
Those are my. Now, how do you feel? And this is going to be an ultra nerdy question. Where do you like Latakia? Low percentage of Latakia, high percentage of Latakia in your?
Good question. Yeah, kind of.
That's what gives you the spice. I mean,
Yes,
Latakia is the thing that's going to give you the spice.
I like a little bit of that, but I don't want too much.
Right. Okay.
And part of that too, the way that's going to affect you, it's going to depend on the length of your
Yes, that's right.
and such as well. But yeah, I like a little bit of that spice in there,
Yeah.
but not too much, and not.
I'm low to mild with that, but
Yeah.
I also smoke. I smoke Church Wardens, so I'm smoking the longer and drop stem. Just for two reasons. It makes the smoke cooler because it has a little further to travel, and you're much less likely to get any. People don't realize anytime you're smoking a pipe, some saliva makes it down the stem of the pipe. And I'd rather that winds up in the bowl and burns off rather than me accidentally, pulling it back in, for a second round.
I've become, outside of my Dunhill, I've kind of gravitated more
Dunhill
to
pipes.
stem.
That's awesome. The minute I heard you say Dunhill pipe, I said I had to ask, because Dunhill pipe tobacco, that's English pipe tobacco. And,
Right.
So that's
Right.
awesome.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's.
Jonathan, just batch 15 right off a shop man on the nose is straight up vanilla bean ice cream. Just that's the first thing I get.
For me on the news in this one, I get Cadbury egg like that.
Oh, that's a great.
I see that.
15 hasn't hit. Jonathan, I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, and the 15 hasn't hit town yet, but I am going out hunting tomorrow, so fingers crossed. When should we expect toasted batch 5?
So we bottle that at the end of this month, so it'll be coming out. You'll see it probably in the next 6 weeks, I would say.
Okay.
Good.
Perfect.
I'm finding this batch 15 does not feel as high as 118 to me. And the minute that you said Cadbury egg, and I've been a Cadbury egg fan since I was a kid. I love those, that creamy center and all. I
Dark, rich.
so get that. That absolutely describes
Dave.
to a T.
Dave coming in hot.
Yeah, I've got a swipe of Cadbury egg from one of the kids. I tried only one a year, I'm like, all right, each of you got just one of these.
Yeah. To tag on what Dave Vogelsang said, I have finished 1 through 5, but I still have 6 through 14. Anxiously awaiting 15 on the KLuke batches. Yeah.
Jonathan, I think this might be. Go ahead, Toby. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go.
I think Nancy made a point. She didn't think that the batch 15 drinks as hot as maybe the proof point. And I kind of find that I'm not going to say that was the case with every single KLuke batch, but I will say that I think that has been 2/3, 3/4, maybe 80% of the time. I think that KLuke bourbons drink lower than the stated proof. And the same thing goes for the toasted. But I also credit Jonathan. He's the one that turned me on to toasteds, because I was not, I'd had a few. They weren't. I was kind of turned off by them, and then I was such a fan of the bourbons. Like, well, I'm going to try the toasted, and he's the one that really kind of got me back into toasted. So kudos, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonathan, the more this sits in the glass, the more I'm getting like a saddle leather baseball glove kind of thing kicking.
It's funny because I'm also not somebody who gravitates toward whiskeys finished or bourbons finished in a secondary spirit. I'm fine with secondary wood finishes most of the time, but including toasted. But when I think in the last year or 18 months, it's been solely whiskeys from the two of you that have gotten me into spirit finished and being more open to it, because much of the time they're just too sweet. They finish too sweet, and especially a lot of the cigar batches, I think people are just trying to make them sweet to contrast the cigar, and that's not necessarily what contrast is.
Penelope.
Right.
Yeah. The Rio and what's the other one? The Rio and something else.
Havana.
Whatever. Yeah. Those are anyway. But yeah, but Jonathan, your Armagnac, that Liquor Barn Armagnac pick, that thing is, it's long gone. But there was about a 4-week period where I cleaned out Lexington on the Liquor Barn Armagnac pick, taking care of a lot of our friends.
Remember,
and then
Toby, I sent Jonathan a text. I said, do you know anywhere in Kentucky, Lexington or Louisville, we can get it? And he sent me the store, and you went the next day and cleaned them out.
Yeah.
This is what he's talking about right here.
Yes, that's Jonathan Combs runs that Liquor Barn up there. He's got a great palate. I really enjoy tasting with him. And so I think to answer a couple of your questions, so one, in the proof, we take a lot of pride in, I like 115 plus or minus 5 points. Jennifer's probably more 110 to 115. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's really, I always try and tell people, it's not about the proof, it's about the experience, and
that's right.
We blend, I don't really look at the proof, but I know what we like flavor wise. As we're adjusting these blends, they just naturally land in that 115 to 120. I mean, I figure I've tasted now probably 2,000 barrels straight from the barrel, probably not as many as you, Nancy, but more than I would say the average person in this profession. And for me, it's always about finding that sweet spot of flavor with aromatics and fruit and richness and spice. And 115 plus or minus 5 has always been the sweet spot for me. And pretty much every release we've done has come in that 115 to 120 realm. And then the second part, you talk about the finishes. I think part of what's made our finishes really kind of stand out in the market is we're not finishing to like a release calendar per se. So like when we go and taste them with people, if they need more time, we'll let them go longer. If they're ready to go, we bottle them. And we had people come do these single barrel picks. Like when Brad came from Liquor Barn, we spent the day tasting through these. We bottled this whiskey, less than 3 weeks after he tasted it and said it was ready to go. and it's finished, just under 4 months. So we have very short finishes. Even the toasted products, they're only maybe 8-10 weeks, because I don't want to over extract the finishing. I look at it like the sauce to the dish. Complement the protein, but don't overwhelm it. And I think that's what makes great finished products so successful, is you have to have that balance, which again comes back to if you're running on a big calendar and you've got to hit X number of cases in X window, it's much harder to control that flavor profile when you're looking at a spreadsheet and have to produce based off that. So,
Jonathan, when you said calendar, it got me thinking. What are you looking? Is there kind of a guideline you have for your calendar? Do you want to release one batch of bourbon a year, every 8 months, every 10 months, one batch of toasted a year? Is there, I know it's not an exact thing, but is there sort of rough calendar for how often you want to release those?
Yeah, so our core products, the 100 proof and the barrel strength, well, now the 100 proof is back online. So we'll do the 100 proof and barrel strength every 4 months. You'll have a new batch, so 3 times a year. So like our next bottle of those we'll bottle in late June, come out, probably mid-July. Then we'll do toasted bourbon. We're doing once a year. So we got toasted bourbon coming up here again at the end of the month. And then once we dump that, we'll take those one-time used toasted barrels. We'll age our rye in there, for 3 or 4 months. And then you'll see that come out for once-year release. We'll do some single barrels throughout the year. You'll see a couple cask finishes, some things that just need more time. We laid down doing them by taste. But the core SKU releases, the barrel strength 100 proof every 4 months, toasted bourbon once a year, toasted rye once a year. And as far as finish times, it just all depends on what time of the year, how hot it is in Kentucky for extraction. And we just taste them all the time and do it off taste rather than off time.
So the 100 proof, I've never bought any of your stuff online because I haven't had to. It's the 100 proof going to be making it to stores in, by chance, Lexington, Kentucky? Or do I need to buy that online?
Well, unfortunately, we had so much demand on the 100 proof in this batch. We were only able to ship it to half our markets, and we still couldn't fulfill the distributor orders just in the 4 states out of the 8. So this first batch did not make it to Kentucky. Hopefully in June, you'll see it up there. Then as far as online, there's nobody online that has availability. There's Stillbox sold out in less than 10 minutes on 100 proof. We've got another called the Whiskey Library out of DC that's got batch 15. They have an Amaro cask finish bourbon that we just sent them that's exclusive up there. The 100 proof, again, we're small. I can only taste so much at a time and build these batches. And unfortunately, we just didn't have enough to send out to all the markets on the 100 proof this go around. We have a lot of love down here in Mississippi, which we actually haven't got ours yet in Mississippi, in my home market, which I've been getting beat up about. But it's at the state's warehouse, hopefully shipping out this weekend, if not next week. But like Louisiana, we sent it down for the New Orleans Bourbon Fest over there in Luca's home country there in South Louisiana.
Yep.
Most stores already sold out of it by the time we got through Bourbon Fest weekend. So it's been really exciting to see the love for that product, and we're glad to have it back in our regular rotation of bottling now moving forward.
Turn peachy now. God, this thing's changing all over the place.
It has changed. I just I'm kind of getting a little bit of the bottom of the glass.
I'm into that. I'm into the Armagnac right now.
That's coming up.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah. Shall we go there?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we can do that.
What a twist of my arm, Nancy.
Well, yeah, I'm already on this 15. Now I get that grilled peach, and now that vanilla ice cream coming through. Like it just.
Yep. And then the leather on the nose. The leather on the nose just makes me want to it's crushable.
There is
So funny.
You would never know it's 118 proof till you had way too much with your cigar and had to get back inside.
There's a great question that came in at it's from John it's Legalbo at 5:41 p.m. my time, at least. So for both, what has been your biggest blending blunder? More importantly,
that's a great
what did you learn from it? I think that is an excellent question.
Yep.
I don't know if
Come on.
Nancy, you have a lot more chance of, I mean, the incredible amount of work that you do all over the country. I'm sure you have a lot of different things you may not have experienced till you get there the first time. You have a wide range of just things that could go really right and things could probably go really wrong. I'd imagine your scope of
had a lot of problems before. One case, I had almost a year's worth of moldy, all the year's worth of moldy grain that I didn't discover until a few years later. Because a new head distiller had come online and hadn't been sharing things with me. That was challenging to say the least.
Nancy, is that when you were consulting for Jephthah Creed, just by chance?
I've never worked with them before.
No, I'm kidding.
That said, I've had a lot of issues before. One at Virginia Distillery Company, before they had the capacity to bottle themselves. The people that are the distillery that they were working with had a proprietary filtration system that took all of the color out of their their single malt whiskeys. So think of all the color coming from the sherry cask and the ex-bourbon. God. That was a nightmare to try and fix. We did it, and got that particular blend and ended up being an award-winning whiskey. But for
you turn shit into a gold medal. I love it.
Yeah, whole thing about being a master blender is it's not nearly as glamorous as people think it is, and a good deal of to me, what kind of determines making someone a master blender is if you can handle the problems, because you're going to have so many issues. I mean, and not just from sourcing other people's whiskeys. Every distillery, I don't care who they are out there, they that have millions of dollars at their disposal. I've worked with, some consulted for some big distilleries before, and I can tell you everyone has a problem out there somewhere, and it's in how you handle with those problems. If you're able to come up with a remedy for those issues, and at the very least, come up with something that's quaffable for people to drink, and at the best, maybe you can kind of turn the lemons into lemonade and make something really good from it. But it's really in the kind of the problems that you really learn things. So I don't know if I want to hand that over to you, Jonathan, and kind of get your take as a owner.
Well, fortunately for me, I don't have nearly as much. Like, I imagine for you too, I'm sure sometimes you're brought on board to help people that have some sort of crisis, and they're bringing you in to help figure out, like, hey, we have this problem, we don't know what to do, right? Like, what do you have for us as a solution? So thank God for me, I haven't faced like that kind of major, crisis. For me, it's more about, like, I'll blend things that, like I said, make sense on paper. When we taste them, I'm like, I don't understand. This doesn't taste anything like any of my notes from the 10 barrels. Like, how do we get to this? And I think that was something I learned, probably a decade ago, just kind of my first blending experiences were with Chris Morris at Woodford, just doing those 2-barrel Woodford blends. And, we would talk about even just 2 barrels. I'm like, Chris, I don't understand. My notes on these 2 barrels are this and this. And then we have this flavor, which makes no sense to me, because I know that's why this is so difficult. He goes, and you can imagine start getting up to, 80, 100, 120, 140 barrel blends.
Good question.
It's just amazing when you're trying to find that. I guess for him, he's looking for a very, very consistent product. Where me, I'm looking for a wide realm of different profiles. And I'm sure for you get to do both. I'm sure there's some companies you work with that you have a very tight, we want to be in this circle all the time. And I'm sure you have some that want every batch to be very specific. And again, I think that just comes down to, you've got to spend time with the barrels and the whiskey and tasting them and going through them. figuring out why does this work, why does this not, and just continuously taste over and over again. I mean, I can't imagine the depth of experience you must have in good and bad of tasting and blending and problem solving out there.
Well, it's being able to really know your stock inside out and knowing how it's evolving and watch it evolve is really important. I mean, there are times when, yeah, I mean, I know I've been brought in to solve problems. Pardon my language, but what the fuck? How did this happen? I mean, that.
How did you get here?
Yeah, exactly. That's just a horrible situation to be in, but it's also a creative challenge.
Thank you. I was getting ready. Yep.
And if I've got about 5 students I've had studying under me for about 12 to 13 years. I always tell them, you know, if kind of your best work is going to be how you can solve the worst problems. You're going to always be most proud of that. I mean, even above things, you know, where you've gotten a gold or a double gold or a platinum or something. I mean, obviously you're going to be proud of that work, but the things you're going to be most proud of are, you know, how you came in and saved the day, essentially, because it will happen at some point. It's inevitable.
Well, you know, I think to that note too, one of the other things I really enjoy about this business is there's a lot of camaraderie. Like I could text, you know, a owner or a master distiller and say, hey, look, I've got this going on, you know, with these barrels that you guys distilled, and I can't figure out what, and they can kind of help walk you through that. And I spend a lot of my time talking to small brands about distribution and trying to figure out, you know, how to work with distributors, you know, and because I mean, a lot of my job comes down to that side of it as well, the creative side. I also have to figure out, like, you know, how do we go out and get this product into people's hands, and how do my kids get to eat? So I spend a lot of time talking to other brand owners about that also. And there's a lot of camaraderie. I can pick up the phone and send someone a text or a phone call or an email and say, hey, we're looking to go into this new state. Who do you recommend? And, or this happened, or we have a problem with our glass, you know, do you have somebody we need to get, you know, bottles right now? And there's a lot of people that are very willing to help. And it's really an amazing industry, the camaraderie that goes on between everybody. I think that's a really special part about what we do also.
I love that part of the industry. I'd say 95% of people in the industry, I mean, there's always, you know, the one outlier, but I'd say a good 95% of the people in our industry are just wonderful and willing to share their knowledge and you know, just exactly as you say. You know, it's I love that. I mean, I think we're really lucky to be part of an industry like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really enjoying it. It's been a while. Really, you sent this to me, I think, like around the beginning of the year. Or,
yeah, end of last year.
At the beginning of the year, I was drinking a fair amount of it, and it's really nice to kind of come back to it right now. And
yeah, so we did, you know, about 4 months finish on this. So again, just want to compliment the bourbon, but not overwhelm it, but really highlight that baked fruit and some floral and some of those candy notes, but still know it's bourbon as a base whiskey in there, right? Still get some rye spice, still get some your traditional caramel toffee.
Well, and that's something I'm finding, Jonathan, that I really appreciate about this. Is that it's not, and I think this is kind of what steered me away from cask finishing lately. Is I see a lot of things out there that completely mask over the base distillate instead of complementing it. And I feel like this really complements it. And that to me is really kind of like the fine tuning, kind of the fine points about what makes someone, you know exactly at what moment you need to pull it. And it's what I get out of here, I get a lot of the base bourbon, but the Armagnac is just more like an accent. And I don't know how long you had it in those casks, but that's what I want to see. It should never mask. I should never mistake this for as much as I love Armagnac and I'm a fan, I want to taste the bourbon and for the finished cast to just kind of be an accent. And I'm really getting that there, and I really enjoy that. So very well.
That means a lot to us. That's again, that's our goal, is to be, like you said, just be that beautiful accent. So this one was just under 4 months, an Armagnac cask up there at BBC.
Yeah.
And again, it just, like such a compliment, it shouldn't overwhelm it. Because we still want you to know you're drinking KLuke bourbon with just a hint of that Armagnac in the finish.
Yeah, and that's which I like that, and I'll shut up here in a second. I just wanted to say you definitely have a house style, and I'm kind of discovering that as we go through the lineup, and I like the fact, I love this Armagnac cask finish, and it's really just kind of accentuating your house style, and that's very well done, my friends. So
thank you, I appreciate that.
I think what Nancy said just a second ago, and Jonathan can elaborate if I missed the point here, but kind of what Kevin O is saying right here is, instead of chasing just one more improvement, it's like, I think if you exceed tasting the bourbon on the finish is when you've gone too far. Does that sound correct?
Yeah. I've got a great case in point, and I don't think they're going to fire me at this point, but Joseph Magnus Murray Hill cask special release number 4, finished in the Calvados.
Yep.
So this to me is a great study in exactly that question. So when I initially did this 2 years ago, I remember 2 months. 2 months when I put this blend in the Calvados cask, it was just perfect. It was perfect, and I know what Dave Vogel's saying. I sent him some samples of before and after. Oh, awesome! Oh, all
right, I'm gonna have some with you.
Okay.
I just came across this earlier looking for something else that Todd and Andy sent to me. Perfect.
So this is I'm going to demonstrate something, and and I've heard a lot of people say that they do like this particular blend, but about 2 months in, it was just wonderful. It was just spectacular, and I got a little greedy. I thought, well, if I'm getting all this beautiful apple note, and it's not kind of overriding the bourbon in here. And then I kind of let it go for another 6 weeks or so. And God, do I ever regret that? Because what I found, what I find on this particular, and again, I think it's good, but it's not what it had been. Is that the toasted note of the oak of the finishing cask kind of overrode the apple note from the fruit and the Calvados, and now when I tasted, I really get that toasted oak note kind of covering up the apple fruit and the base whiskey in a way that to me is just like, oh God, if only I'd been a little bit more disciplined. And that's the kind of thing I think as a blender, if you kind of see your work, and you have to be self-critical, you have to be your own worst critic. I mean, it's not that it's a bad product, not that at all. It's just I wish you all had seen what it was like 6 months before that. If that makes sense.
I know it's hard, right? Because no one else gets to experience what you get to experience on the journey of the cask finishing, and
Yep.
and it's so hard. Like someone mentioned, it's like you're like, well, if I could just get a little bit more, but when is that little bit more? Like, wait a minute, now here's the curve, and now all of a sudden we went this way, and there's no coming back from it, right? It's
when it's done, it's done. Yeah, it's kind of too late at that point. And that's one of the things about blending is that there's no, you have a vision of what you want to create, but there's no like point at which you just have to be attentive. Inside all I can say, and for the distilleries I work with now, they've all I actually do have deadlines, and I have for a long time. I mean, like the highest end stuff doesn't have a deadline, but the bread and butter does, and that just kind of happens over time. But
sure.
it's you kind of have to learn to work within those parameters, and that's difficult. And I don't know how you feel about this, Jonathan, but I'll tell you, if nothing I've ever done would have ever been released if I didn't have pressure on me, because I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I just like want to sit and tweak things and get into the whole art of it.
I understand that.
You got to keep the light on, as it were. But anyway, that.
Hey, Jonathan,
Yeah,
I got a question, just kind of off the reservation, because I'm ADHD. And you don't have to answer it with exactly the finish, but are you looking at kind of doing some stuff outside the box that you've been doing in the last 4 or 5 years?
As far as just like different finishes or just products in general?
Maybe a finish or a blend. Are you sticking with? Because I mean, there is absolutely nothing wrong with sticking with what.
I'm a pretty traditional. I mean, I love Four Roses. I love Wild Turkey. That's kind of my baseline. I think for me, it's more about if something comes along, I'm excited about. I'm never worried about what's trendy or what's the newest craze of this finish or that. I mean, I always tell people, for me, whether I was picking a single barrel or I'm creating a blend, is if this is the last whiskey I get to drink, can I be proud to pour this in my glass if it's the last thing I get to drink? And that's always my end goal on everything we release. And I'm sure it's the same for you, Nancy, right? It's like, if people are going to go out and spend, their hard-earned money on our products, we want to make sure it's really something special. And we always try to over-deliver in every bottle I think that people buy. I know that's my goal, and I'm sure it's the same for you. We really want to make sure it's something that we can be proud of, and that when you buy a bottle of our whiskey, when you share it with your family and friends, you're excited, and it's never like, oh, did they do okay this time, or did they get it wrong? Like, it always should be, hey, this is going to be great. It's going to be different than the last batch. It's going to be its own experience, but it's going to be something special. And that's what we strive for in everything that we do. So,
well, and to just piggyback on that, KLuke is one of those, I don't have to try it before I buy it, and this is not because you're on stream. Marty knows, we've talked about it, oodles of times off stream. It's just when the new batch of KLuke comes out, I'm buying it. And, having not tried it, and, that used to be the case with ECBP, with Larceny Barrel Proof, with Stag, a lot of these type of once a year, twice a year, whatever it is a year. And it's not the case with all those anymore. They've burned a few bridges, but KLuke hasn't, and that's because of you, Jonathan, and kudos to you, for it.
well, we're so small, we can't afford to have a product that's subpar come out, because at the end of the day, our kids won't get to eat. I mean, it really, if we don't put out something that it can't even just be good, it's really got to be great. Or I mean, this is what we do for a living, you know, and we take a lot of pride in it, and we really try to make sure it's something special. If you guys are going to go out and spend, you know, $100 plus per bottle, we want to make sure it delivers every single time. And kind of the running joke in our household, even though Jennifer doesn't think it's funny, I always tell her if something happens to me, I'm like, you got to call Nancy. Nancy Fraley is the only person I would feel comfortable in blending our whiskey with you, and she doesn't think it's weird, but I tell her that all the time.
I'll be on call.
You're my emergency contact list. But again, I believe in what you do, and I've watched your career now, you know, for over a decade, and just the pride you take in the products, and you know, you work with such a amazing depth of different things, right? From South Louisiana to, I mean, just all over the country, and just to watch what you've been able to do with all these totally different types of whiskey, and to create something special at each distillery you've been a part of, I think is really amazing. So.
Well, thank you, and I've been watching you too. So that's, you know, respect is mutual. I think anytime I see anyone that really cares about quality and is, you know, not just in it to make a quick buck. I mean, obviously you've got to make a living, and I respect that, but it's about caring about what you're doing. It's about the artistry of it, and, you know, caring. You know, you're doing something that makes people want to have a second and a third pour, and that to me, earns respect. You know.
But to Nancy's credit, is there anybody that's more responsible for bringing respect to Texas bourbon than Nancy Fraley? I mean, there's you know, that's a hard place to make, you know, good bourbon. And I think what Nancy's helped Still Austin do down in Texas has, you know, because a lot of the time you would never be able to pick Still Austin out as being Texas whiskey or Texas bourbon. And I think that has a lot to do with Nancy's influence at that distillery. Otherwise, it could just be one of several other Texas distilleries that, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying they stand out as being Texas whiskey. And I think that Still Austin is kind of one of the ones that really brought, you know, other profiles to Texas bourbon.
Nancy, how far along was Still Austin when you started getting involved with them?
December of 2013. So 13 years ago this year.
So long before any of us were talking about Still Austin.
Wow, that's amazing. I had no idea.
It was just fantasy, you know, at that point. I'm not fantasy, but, you know, I've been part of it for the past 13 years, every step of the way.
Wow.
Which is the way I like to work with,
Sure.
You know, the main people I've worked with, or the main four I've worked with over the years, is that I want to see, you know, I don't.
It's a little. That's a 290 Still Austin rye pick. I just poured for myself there.
I love it.
Man.
You guys probably did that.
I'll get a little bit of that too. I don't get paid as an employee. I'm an independent contractor, but I do the work of a master blender who would be an employee, essentially. So if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, so I just said to kind of let folks know, I got laid off at Germain Robin in the brandy distillery where I started in the Great Recession of 2008. And it affected me so much economically that I swore I'd just never put all my eggs in one basket again.
Mm.
So that's why I kind of created this model of being like a freelance master blender, where I just worked for a few distilleries and, you know, and be completely loyal to them, and, you know, have, you know, maybe, you know, here and there an international product or a project or whatever, but work with these people for the long term, just because quite honestly, I didn't want to, you know, be someone's employee again and get laid off. I mean, that's the truth of it. I just didn't want to, you know, I couldn't afford to go through that again. So, so that's, you know, why I kind of did that. And I have to say, it's been a wonderful adventure, and I've really enjoyed it. And by the way, I've got a little Tanager 3 right here. So,
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Bragger.
I'm gonna answer this one. I'm not sure. This one
for me.
it doesn't have a batch or proof or anything on there, but I'm gonna have some anyway.
Oh, Naomi? Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. Someone's at my door and I can't get it right now. But anyway,
I'm gonna have some of that with you.
Oh, sorry, Jonathan. What did you say you're pouring right now?
I have a Tanager as well. I'm not sure exactly which batch. Todd.
I don't know.
Todd sent this to me from 21090 probably end of last year. So
okay, so that might be number.
Might be the 25.
yeah.
I'll have a little bit
buddy.
of 5. Let's see.
My Tanagers are some reason on my wife's bar downstairs. I have no reason why, but I think we all know why.
So they're not coming back, is what you're saying.
They're not coming upstairs here.
You're not coming back up.
No.
Would you mind talking about this whiskey a little bit about kind of what?
Yeah.
You're kind of.
That's a story that's always well told. Yeah.
So yeah, and I know I've been telling it quite a lot lately. So I want to do.
There he is.
I mean this with absolute love because this is one of my babies. Yeah, but I wanted to get away from the monstrosity of the cask finishing thing that I created with that, and as much as I love that. I wanted to get back to a traditional cigar blend with Tanager, and so my mentor Hubert Chemin-Robin made his first cigar blend 32 years ago in 1994, and I was trying to get it was a brandy made here in California, and two of my mentors were kind of involved in the whole creation of cigar blends, 35 years ago or whatever. And I wanted to kind of get back more to a traditional style that doesn't use any kind of cask finishes, that looks more just what I was saying earlier about like the fatty acid content. And so I with Tanager, there's absolutely no cask finish. I've been wanting to do this for a number of years, and what I do with that is use a French production method that goes back to, I'd say, like the 1780s in France. It's called Petit Eau. Small waters. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as Vieux Faible, which means old weak. So essentially, what it is fortified water that you rather than adding water to the whiskey, in this case, you add whiskey to the water, so you're going up in proof when you make it, and that creates a lot of esterification. Some of the fruit notes and such, and also kind of helps it stabilize the fats. But you then age that Petit Eau indefinitely. You can age it for years and years and years, and I did that actually at J. Henry and Sons. I started laying that down 11 years ago, the Petit Eau there. But anyway, so the whole theory is you use that as opposed to just like reverse osmosis water for your reduction. And that's, by adding fortified water that's been aging, you're going to pull in a lot of those caramelized wood sugars from the barrel, the alcohol solubles, right? So it adds a whole other layer of mouthfeel, and it's something that in the cognac world, again, it's been done since around 1780-ish or so. But it's a something I got from my production training that's, I think, really cool, that kind of adds a note, where I don't have to use cask finishing, because I kind of feel bored with that these days, and I just want to kind of get back to the natural flavors of bourbon again. If that makes sense. Nothing against cask finishing. I still do plenty of it, but it's I've just kind of been wanting to explore with getting other flavors and such. So anyway,
what's amazing on this whiskey is the finish is real vibrant, but it's rich. Like it's almost like you get like this elegant, like bright acidic, but then like you said, you get this mouth coating richness. Like they're both going on at the same time, where it's like just all over your palate. You kind of have the vibrancy, acidic, with the like tannic mouthfeel and structure. It's just.
Oh, thank you. That's I like that, and that's theoretically, and I don't know if it comes out practically, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but the caramelized wood sugars and the fat, the lactones that you're able to pull from the oak should lead to a longer finish. Which a longer finish is, where we're getting back to the fat again for a cigar blend. And that's, the fat kind of holds the flavor and carries things through. It's like I think of like doing a God, what are those bone marrow or something? How that really holds a lot of flavor in it. Fat tends to hold a lot of flavor. And Jonathan, I'd really love to get your perspective on that, kind of given your background, kind of what you think about that.
Yeah, to me, it reminds me of like a really well-aged wine, like a Cabernet that's got some great cellar aging on there. You still get the wood tannins and the mouthfeel, right? And it kind of coats your palate. But then you also get some nice acidity, like give you that vibrant pop, and you get the richness, which just extends out to finish. Yeah, I'm gonna have to track down a bottle of this for myself. This is the finish is just.
Well, thanks, and if it's a cigar blend, I don't if you ever want to talk about it, but I'd be happy to do that with you. But just if you don't, just remember. It's all about fat and humidity, fat and humidity, kind of the maturation conditions for that. That's really kind of what you're looking for there.
Now you slowly add the water to this product, right? Aren't you? You add the water. Are you adding some of the water in the barrels of whiskey as they're aging slowly, so they're incorporating together? Is that kind of the process for this?
Yes, and that too. It's part of the French tradition of slow water reduction. So what you're trying to prevent, at least with brandies, and again, with your wine background, I know you totally can get this, but with the both the fat from the grape and the fat from the lees, if you go from say cask strength down to bottling strength too fast, you're going to saponify things. So the fatty acids and alcohol and water aren't going to bond properly. So that's kind of the whole theory behind it. However, with bourbon, you're not as worried about saponification as you are with grape spirits, that have all that fat. But the kind of the added bonus to that, well, I have seen bourbons saponified, just to kind of be transparent about that. I mean, it's not as prevalent as it would be in a brandy product. But that said, if you go slowly over time and during any particular water reduction session, when you're going from cask strength down to bottling strength, it really allows everything, the water, the fatty acids, and the alcohol molecules to really bond in a way that you really don't get if you go too fast. And I'm curious, Jonathan, what do you do for like products with the
proof
shot?
Yeah, the like batch 5, the 100 proof. How do you do your proofing?
Yeah, so because Bardstown's our bottling partner, so they'll take it, we'll send it over to them. They'll go ahead and blend it all together, and then they'll slowly add water, a couple weeks before bottling. But nothing like, this is a couple year project, right? Like you spend a couple years of slowly adding that water to the whiskey to.
Yeah, but even a few weeks is that makes all the difference. In the traditional bourbon world, it's usually done in a day. Even taking a few weeks is wonderful, I think. And you can tell a difference. So in the classes, I teach classes for the industry, but I'll often do take a bourbon that's gone through the traditional, like a 1 day reduction from cask strength down to bottling strength versus, like a few weeks or months or whatever. People can always tell a difference. The one that where, you go quickly over time, or quickly. At one time, like at 1 day, you can taste when you kind of become attuned to it, you can taste the separation between the alcohol and the water.
And filtration too, right? Depending if you're trying to do minimal filtration and non-chill filtration to hold those fatty acids, I think that's we always do everything non-chill filtered, because I know the more you strip out those solubles and those fats out there, the more you're losing mouthfeel and texture. I know you run the risk of it, breaking a little bit if you get really cold weather, but I just think you lose so much structure and mouthfeel if you chill filter the whiskey.
Oh, I absolutely agree. For certain products, like brandy, you really need to do a chill filtration, just given the amount of fats. But for whiskeys, I think allowing those fats to remain just really kind of adds so much to the whole product. But I'm really I've been kind of got myself another pour. I'm really nursing this.
I'm sitting enjoying these two side by side with got those kind of going back. I already finished my Tanager had in a glass, and I don't want to drink the rest of my sample here. So
Let me pour some more Armagnac then.
I don't know if you don't have to again answer this, and I know I don't reveal my source, so I totally respect it. But is there anyone in particular who you sourced your Armagnac cask from, or?
Yeah, they wouldn't let us disclose the secondary barrels, unfortunately. And really, we're just starting to kind of play around with this secondary program. We did 13 releases last year, and some of those were secondary toasted barrel aged, where we took a fresh dump toasted barrel after we aged our toasted bourbon, and then secondary aged another product in it. And then we did 6 cask finished bourbons, 4 cask finished ryes. So just really kind of trying to play around with, just having some fun with it, having some different expressions out in the market, and just something different to enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
some fun, unique. And again, my goal is to try to get to some sort of, cigar focused blend. And I just don't know yet what that looks like. And I wanted to have kind of a baseline of things that I could taste now and say, okay, well, here's Cabernet, here's Armagnac, here's Cognac, here's, PX Sherry, Oloroso Sherry. I've got Tawny Port, I've got Ruby Port. Like, let me start playing around with blending these and trying to figure out, like, because I really have no idea. And I really haven't sat down a whole lot. I've done a little bit of playing around with it, but I've also got to stay focused on like every day's daily tasks,
Absolutely. Yeah.
You get to the exploratory, like you say, kind of at the end of the day, sitting outside having a cigar, grabbing a bunch of these bottles, bringing them out there and kind of playing around with blending them and see what works together. And that'll be my R&D for the next year to come up with that product. So
do you think you are going to do a cigar blend then?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to. Just again, I enjoy cigars. My local cigar shop owner, who's a good friend of mine, it obviously something that all our local guys are asking for, but it will be very tailored to, again, old world, kind of styled casks.
Sweet.
No Ambarana. It'll be, trying to highlight like that dark chocolate, dark coffee, that dark fruit profile, that oiliness, that mouthfeel, that texture, to complement, like you said, a medium to, full-bodied cigar where the whiskey is going to go along for that journey and not overwhelm the cigar.
Don't overspice
complement each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And someone asked,
samples, I put some together and see what you think.
What batch of I'm currently drinking 498 of JMB.
I don't
That's
think
10 plus, about 10 years and 6 months plus 20 year in there. But anyway, God, what was I going to say to that? I don't know. I have no idea.
as much as this hurts.
What is that, cousin?
That was the one he was talking about earlier.
Down
11?
67.
Oh, 67. Oh, ouch.
Oh,
So
God.
I know what.
Might need a moment of silence, as
All right, we're good.
You play taps.
Any more where that came from?
Well, you got families.
I do. I know somebody that does this.
You got.
Yeah.
And I don't have any other batches here at home, but I've been fortunate to try a bunch of them over the years. One of the great things about being in retail when I lived that life was customers coming in and buying stuff and opening it up and getting a chance to try it. So I've had a chance to try, a ton of batches over the years.
411 OH.
I love your tasting notes on these batches too. It's really incredible to see, like I know this one's a tobacconist, but like just to see the depth of explanation you give. To be honest, I can't imagine how you keep track of all these different distilleries you have to work with, and then different projects within each one, the core line, the limited releases. I have a hard enough time keeping my schedule together on my small brand. I can't imagine your scale of what you're doing with all these different people. And
Well, with the fact that I've been working with all of them for at least 13 years, and they're not, they're at this point, they're not just like clients, we're family at this point. But I also, when it comes to those tasting notes, and I've heard some people say, God, how can she get all that out of there? It's like, don't take this stuff so seriously, folks. It's
right.
It's just,
Have fun with it.
Have fun. And that's all I'm doing when I take my notes. I'm just, I just riffing off of something. I mean, I've said this so many times. There are only so many times or ways you can say vanilla and caramel and fruit, and you just kind of have to be creative with it, because at the end of the day, I want to get to that question.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. I knew it was coming.
Here in a minute.
And I looked for it last weekend in Virginia. I'm just saying, but go ahead. Sorry.
you just kind of have to be creative. If you cook, I know Jonathan, you come from that kind of background of, I've never been a professionally in the cooking or restaurant industry or anything like that. I like food. I like to eat. I like to cook, and you just kind of open your mind to, well, if you're just kind of tasting something. Well, where's that taking me? Well, just kind of go off on some kind of riff, and people just take this stuff like, oh, I'm not getting it. I'm not, just don't take it so freaking seriously.
There's no right or wrong, right? It's all about the experience, what you get out of it. And
yeah, you get what you get. I got what I got at that moment. And you know what? If I taste that next week, I might get something completely different. I mean,
that's I've said this since I started the channel 5 years ago, is find me another thing in the world 4 or 10 people can get on screen and say everything is different and nobody's wrong.
That's right.
That's the thing. Find me something else in this rotten world that we can agree on that.
Well, then I tell people the 4 of us could taste the same products tonight, taste them again tomorrow, then the next day. Yeah. We would all have a different opinion on the same products on a different day, because it's just, that's what makes it so special. There's no right or wrong. It's all about time and place and experience.
Time, place, experience. I'll tell you what, too. Like when I can taste things out here in California, and I can go to my twin sister's house in Florida, have the same whiskey, and it tastes completely different.
Wow.
In fact, when I go back east to her house, my twin's house,
Stevie.
It's oftentimes the whiskey seems very aggressive and kind of angular, whereas here in California, where it's very dry and not humid in the same way as it is like around Jacksonville and St. Augustine, it's very, it just tastes different, but it's the same whiskey. I can take samples back with me. I've done blending from her house, and it tastes different. So, where you are, what your humidity and, temperature conditions are. I mean, there are just so many factors, how you're feeling that day, what you had to eat. I mean, there are just a
million things.
A million things.
Exactly.
Let me ask a question real quick, because I talked to Nancy about this probably twice a month between me and her texting each other. When she's working on a blend, she'll send me pictures. I'm not going to say any names of where they're from. She'll send me the bottles that are out there, and she's starting her base. And Nancy is my witness. I'll say to her, "Good Lord, good luck with getting the base." Every time, that's my response to her. Jonathan, with your KLuke blends that you're doing, these 10-barrel blends, is it becoming easier for you, or is it still pretty much the same level of difficulty to get the original base to keep adding to get to that 10-barrel blend? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say for me, as the batches have gotten bigger, going from 4 barrels, to 10, it's far more difficult, because now there's that many more variations that one barrel changes, and that many more rounds of tasting we have to do to figure out what's the most exciting blend. So, people keep asking, what's the ceiling? How big can we go with the blends? Honestly, I really have no idea. It could be 12, it could be 20. But I can tell you, as the blends get bigger, it is so much more challenging. And a lot of times our final 2 blends will have 1 barrel difference between them. But the taste is such a different experience. The last couple of batches, I've just sat in the kitchen. I've had Jennifer pour me blind rounds, 4 whiskeys at a time. And I've just tasted them, spit them in the kitchen sink. And I'm like, okay, here's my rating. Boom, boom, boom. Next 4, she pours them. I taste them. Just trying to not be so hyper focused and okay, what speaks to me right now in this flight of 4? Taste them, move on to the next flight. And I'll just keep doing that till my palate's got fatigue, and
yeah,
so hard trying to dial in. Like it's not. It's like both batches are great. Which one's speaking to me more often as my favorite that I want to bottle? You know, for you guys to be your final blend that you taste.
Well, let me kick on that another step. When you think, you know, you're doing that at the sink and Jennifer's helping you and you think you hit on one. Let's say you do it when we get offline. I know you've had a shit ton to drink. That's not going to happen tonight. But let's say this was an average night. You're at the sink, you're doing that, and you think you hit on a base. Do you go back the next day to reevaluate the base to make sure that you think that's what you thought it was?
So
have you ever been like, damn, I think I missed it?
So I pretty much taste. So I'm creating the blends. I pretty much taste daily working on them. And Jennifer doesn't get involved until I've narrowed. I'm like, okay, I've got 10 or 12 blends I'm excited about. Then she sits down and starts tasting with me. And even when her and I taste, we don't discuss them until afterward. So we taste them totally blind. And then it's like, okay, what did you think about glass one? What did I think? So really by the time we get down to like the rapid like tasting, that's the very final round, you know, 4 months into it basically of like, okay, now we're down between two blends. What do we think? And I'm like, all right, we've got to narrow this down. She's like, all right, now we're on the clock. You know, now we're getting 30 days out from bottling. You've got to make a decision. I'm like, I don't know which blend I like. You know, like this one wins and this one wins. This one wins. I'm like, I don't know. And it's kind of like rapid fire. Like, okay, let me not overthink it. Let me just get the whiskey in the glass. Because, you know, when we get to our final stage, we run blind against what we consider the best bourbons out there. So all the other big name sought after bourbons, and we're running blind tastings against those. And I'm trying to have KLuke win those as consistently as possible. Because again, when somebody buys a bottle of KLuke, I want to make sure it can hold up to the best whiskeys out there, in our opinion. And what we're excited, what we're drinking side by side against them, right? It's kind of stylistically similarity. Yeah, it's super difficult. So I can't imagine, you know, when you start getting to 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 barrel blends, I mean, I'm not sure I can get that done in a year. We'll have to see how big we can go. I don't know what the ceiling is yet, but I can tell you it gets more difficult. I also feel more pressure too as each blend moves forward. You know, when you look at something like batch 14, you know, being in Fred's, you know, top 15 whiskeys of the year, I feel a lot of pressure that the next batch has to over deliver based off that.
Jesse.
Yeah, so it's a never-ending process of tasting.
So Nancy, it kind of goes back to you. Do you, once you hit your, you know, base on some of those 13 trillion sample bottles that you sent me on your table, do you just move on from there, trust the original base that you picked, or do you go back to that base just to double check and make sure your palate was where you thought it was at that moment?
Well, if I understand your question correct, cousin, if I'm making a product that's got to be consistent over time, then I always have a like a standard by me, and you know I always know what it is I'm striving for. And there, and just say a quick thing, Jonathan, when you get to, you know, 30, 40 barrel blends, those actually become a lot easier.
Really?
Much. That's where you finally, if you're looking, if you've got a product line where you want to create consistency, having more barrels in the batch is going to create that consistency over time. You know, it's more like a symphony as opposed to a jazz trio, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You know, or
I guess part of ours too is, I guess kind of back to your question, Marty, we don't really have like an exact baseline, you know. For me, it's more of like, I'm trying to figure out like, what's my path from the starting point to the final destination. And I'm never trying to make each batch taste the same. I want each of them to be their own whiskey experience. So for me, it's all about the layers. Like I want to make sure my whiskey has enough layers where there's, you know, fruit and there's richness and there's spice and all these harmonious things. So I don't really have a baseline. I'm sure Nancy has a lot of products that are very specific to a baseline of. I always tell people like Jim Beam White Label, right? Like Jim Beam, you know, they're going to blend 1,000 barrels together, right? And they want that product to taste the same from 1960 to 1980 to today to, you know, 2050. Jim Beam White Label, the goal is always to taste like Jim Beam White Label, because the person buying that product doesn't want any variation. They want every bottle to be the same, whether they buy it, you know, in the US or Australia. They want to taste exactly the same. no matter where they're at in the time point in their life, they always want to taste the same. So for me, I don't ever really want our products to taste exactly the same.
Sure.
So it's a different of style and technique and end goal. And I'm sure, Nancy, you have some of both, right? I'm sure you have products that you need to be in a very tight circle. And then you have things you don't want to taste anything like the previous batch. You want it to be more of a time and place experience. I imagine you get to experience both sides of that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, there are some products where it needs to be consistent from batch to batch. That said, there is a definite flavor drift, and Maker's Mark, who I think is like one of they're the kings of maybe being too, yeah, but yeah. Consistency of if you taste something from say like 1985 versus something from 1995 to 2015, you can see, I mean, there's consistency, but you can also kind of see like a very gradual flavor drift as well. I know I've seen, and that's always something that's kind of when you have a product that you need to keep consistent. The thing about that, it's not sexy. It's not, like a real fun job, keeping consistency over time, but that is so difficult to do. It's a lot more fun to me, at least creatively, and I'm sure Jonathan, you can concur of not being married to something like that. I mean, there are some products that that's the thing. It has to be consistent, from batch to batch to batch, even with the long-term flavor drift. But it is so difficult to do that, and it's not fun, and it's not sexy. There's just nothing sexy about it. It's just like making sure it's all consistent.
Well, and Makers is a great example of that. I know Bill Samuels will tell you, for what, 40, 50 years, like he used to say, his job was just not to screw his dad's whiskey, make it exactly the same, make the same baseline product until Makers 46 came out in, I've got a barrel head here. When I met Bill in July 27th, 2011, when I first met Bill Samuels. I hosted him for an event when Makers 46 came out. And, it's just really amazing. Talk to someone like Jimmy Russell, and like Jimmy said, he spent 20 years on the road just handing people glasses of turkey one-on-one, saying, just keep drinking it or grow to like it, and I think people forget about that part of history when it was very difficult to get people to want to drink bourbon, when clear spirits were king, and 20 years is a long time to get someone to enjoy your product. I mean, I just can't imagine.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it worked in the end. Persistence, but yeah, that's I really admire that, and that just keeping after it is really that's really commendable to me.
Yeah, you really got to love your craft, really believe in your tradition, right? And trying to get people to understand why, I mean, and now we're in this golden era of whiskey where there's just, an incredible amount of brands and depth on the shelf, and
trust what you're doing.
Yeah, you look at something like rye. I remember when I opened up my store, 20 plus years ago, like nobody wanted to buy rye. We had like Rittenhouse and something else. Neither one ever sold. Nobody wanted rye. And I remember when I started looking at, buying rye barrels for single barrels, and thinking, wow, this is crazy to see people actually having enough love for rye to want to buy a whole barrel of it. When, I remember when nobody wanted to buy rye at all, so it's pretty amazing to watch that journey over time, of whiskey and what comes and goes, and, secondary finishes or, low proof, high proof. I mean, there's just so many variables, and there's such a huge exploratory realm you can get into with whiskey. It's a never ending, exciting journey. So
guys, it's 10:18. I don't want to keep y'all any longer than you want to be here, but I'm going to keep trucking. Y'all want to hang out, please do. I know it's been 2
I'm
hours.
good to go a little longer. I just quickly
We're going to get more questions in chat. They're slowly.
Rye. The oldest rye I've got here at my house is from 1886.
Well,
It's
shit, morning, Nancy, bringing that shit up. I mean, come on. What is this shit? 1886.
But you know what? It's fascinating to see. That a sample is really kind of degraded over the years. With oxygen, but it's fascinating to kind of compare that next to modern day rye, and just see kind of how things have evolved and kind of how much they've stayed the same. If that makes sense.
I think we need a blind of 1800s rice from Nancy. Trey said.
Oh, for sure.
Only personal. Yeah, it's a great point, Kevin.
Go on. Yeah.
I've been dying to go down to Burns Steakhouse down in Tampa, Florida, and try. I heard they have Madeira. It's 100 years old, 100 years plus old. Like, I'm dying to go try a glass of 100-year-old Madeira. I've been very spoiled. My wife has incredible wine, but like to go and try Madeira from 1900. Like, I just and just think about that time period, right? To have a bottle of wine that's still in existence from then. Kind of to your point, having that rye, from the 1800s. It's really special to think about, just that time and place and how difficult it was probably to, make those products and how much unknown there was to figure out, compared to modern day now where it's so computerized and dialed in. It's just amazing to think of how those people made those products back then.
I've got 3 samples from the 19th century. One, the original Joseph Magnus from 1893. One that 1886 Pikesville rye from Sherwood, and the other. Everyone break out their 18. That's right. And the other, I've got a vintage Armagnac from 1893, and it's really interesting. So I've got 3 19th century spirits, and it's really interesting to try that stuff, kind of compared to what we have today, and kind of see the imperfections. I mean, and I don't mean they're bad spirits at all. But it's just really kind of interesting to see where things were in fermentation and distillation history and maturation history at that point, if that makes sense. I mean, it's really to terroir and all of that. It's fascinating.
I'm trying to think what the oldest spirit I've had. The oldest wine I've had is from 1942. I'm trying to think what the oldest. I gotta think about that. What's the oldest spirit I've had? Probably the oldest bourbon I own here at home is I've got my 1979 Wild Turkey. I've got others up there. I have to look and see. I've got an old Japanese export 12-year turkey split label and some cheesy gold foil.
Whoa, time out. What is that opened?
Which one? The 79.
Gold.
Yeah, that one's not open. I've got that one still sealed up there.
All right. When you have grandbabies, I'll come down.
You make a journey down this way and you want to come drink some, we'll crack it open and enjoy some.
That 1979 sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, that's the bottle my dad gave when I turned 21. So if you can kind of see these pictures back here.
Yeah.
My great grandfather had the first liquor store in New Haven, Connecticut. They opened up December 10th, 1933. So 5 days after Prohibition. And I told my dad, I was like, "How did you guys manage that?" He goes, "I don't understand. We're Italian. It was the East Coast. It just happened." Well, before that, my family imported Sicilian olive oil. And there's a pizza restaurant up there called Pepe's Pizza. Yep. That opened up in like 1920, and my family imported
a descendant of Genco Abundando. Yeah.
So my family's had a long history in the business.
Wow. Let me see. That is cool.
Yeah.
That is.
This is some older pictures from the store from back in the day.
Wow. That is very cool.
The oldest thing I've got, Jonathan, is from 1978, and it's I don't know what I'm waiting on, but is that
early times?
Look at that.
Still, cousin, that's awesome. Yeah,
We'll have it. We'll crack it.
yeah.
It's made to drink. We'll crack it.
It's one of the things I love about going to Kentucky and going like to, Justin's House of Bourbon or Revival. And there's just so many amazing bottles of old spirits.
Old granddads.
God, I mean, there's just so much out there. Like I said, when you taste them, you think about, the age of the barrels and fermentation techniques and barrel storage. And I mean, there's just, like I said, for me, the most amazing thing is that 86 to 90 proof mouthfeel and texture is just unbelievable compared to modern day whiskey in that same proof.
Those old barrels, those old staves, man, just take you to a different place, And I think there's distilleries that realize what those old pirate bottle Elijah Craig 12-year, wood does, and those old turkey bottles. It's funny. I posted a picture on Instagram this week of it's a Seinfeld episode where George's car is blocked in and he's wearing the big puffy coat, and him and Kramer are waiting in the liquor store for somebody to move so that he can get out, and you can see all those damn Austin Nickel 8 years, and he's holding one of them, and I'm like, Jesus, nobody knows what the hell is right there right now, but yeah, that stuff is just crazy. So Toby's got a bottle here. Is that the Dusty Dan, Toby?
Oh,
Well, okay, sorry.
Is that old granddad?
I thought that's what he was getting, but yeah, he's got.
That looks like an old granddad bicentennial bottle in that box he was bringing up.
He's got this one here that's a Dusty Dan gift, and this is pretty special.
Oh, that's old crap.
Dusty Dan bought me this for Christmas, and this is an Old Crow
Traveler.
Traveler bottle from 1969. I was born in 1969, and this is an Old Crow. So it has this leather strap around it, and the whole thing was designed, so you could throw it in your suitcase and travel with it and be an alcoholic on the go, But yeah, it's a Traveler 5th.
That's a great fill level on that bottle.
That is fantastic. And what month are you, Toby?
I'm sorry?
What month of 69 are you?
January.
Oh, okay. So I was supposed to have been born in 69. I was a 70 baby, but yeah, we're close.
So you're January of 70.
Yeah.
Okay. What day?
14.
Okay. So I'm January 21st, 1969. Yeah,
okay.
So,
All right.
You're not even close.
Both. I think are you an Aquarius? I think
I'm a Capricorn.
Oh, that's right. You're right. You're before me. I'm an Aquarius, but just barely.
Yeah, I'm a dipshit all day.
You got that, cousin.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sure that's not an argument.
Yeah, I don't remember that. It's like Capricorn, Gemini, Leo, and dipshit. Yeah. I don't remember that being one of the astrological. Dipshit's the guy not wearing anything with his finger up his nose.
That's it, man. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, I just quickly want to. I'd seen some earlier things or posts about it. For anyone that has the Virginia Distillery cigar blend.
Oh wow! I've never seen that.
I tried to find it.
Amanda Beckwith is one of my mentees. So I'd taken my mentees to France. I took them for the first time back in 2017 and another trip 2 years ago. And anyway, Amanda was inspired by this. She's been studying with me for 11 years now. And I'm about to make her a master blender. And anyway, if anyone can get a hold of this, do so. I think it's better than any work I've ever done for a cigar blend. I'm so impressed by her work on that. But anyway, just I've seen some folks post about that, and I just wanted to kind
That's
of
pretty exciting.
give her a shout out there.
Hack said Amanda will be with them on April 19th. We'll go through that bottle. Sweet.
Oh,
That's right. Yep.
I'm gonna need a sample of that.
Thank you, buddy. Yep. Last taste of the Magnus. Man down.
Well, so that back then would have been mostly the Barton juice, which I know people seem to love the era between batch 15 to 97, but the Barton was only meant to be like a gap, and I personally find I like those batches, but I find with a cigar or a pipe that the proofs that I was making at that time are just, from, like 125 to 132 are just a little too much for a cigar or a pipe. I'll just put to an interpretation for other people. But I mean, for what it is, it might be fine. But if you're going to pair it with a pipe or a cigar, to me, those proofs are just too high. So there I said it, and kind of that's my own work, but
Too much spice, or it's just too much for
too
an
proof.
average stick.
If you're smoking a cigar or a pipe, you want something that's not going to overpower it. And to me, though, those batches were the proofs just got. I mean, if you're actually going to use it for this, it's just too proofy, and it just kind of makes the smoke itself just too
punchy,
overwhelming. But that's just me.
So
Jonathan is a cigar smoker. I'd love to get your input on that. I mean,
so to follow up on that, proof point versus tobacco, is there a proof range 100 to 110, 105 to 115, 110 to 120, where you kind of think is the sweet spot for a tobacco pairing?
Well, you know what? I don't know if folks remember this, but the batch 1 of Joseph Magnus Cigar Blend Bourbon was just like barely over 100 proof.
Okay.
Barely. And those first batches were actually, I didn't add any water to them. The barrels, they had reduced naturally over time. But I personally find just a little lower proof kind of works. It does for my palate, at least. I don't want to, put words in anyone's mouth, but that to me, just like a kind of like maybe 107 to 115-ish, 117, 18 at most, is kind of, it's kind of a wide range, but it's also, when you get like a 120, 125, 130, you're kind of getting beyond cigar and pipe territory, I think.
It's a great moment. I think that goes for too. If you have too much spice in the tobacco, I can't do like the Davidoff, the Yamasa. I was just texting my friends and I smoked one of those cigars, and it's so spice driven. That Yamasa tobacco is so spicy. I just couldn't do it. I mean, I sat out the other night and I smoked about a third of it, and I was like, I gotta have something else. It was so overwhelming. And I think you can kind of find the same thing with the whiskey. If the proof's too high and you get so much ethanol, it's hard to find that balance, like you said, between the delicate nuances. Because, again, I'm smoking a cigar. I want to enjoy the flavors. I want to enjoy that roller coaster of sweet and spice, and the wrapper and the binder, the filler. I don't want something one-dimensional to overwhelm. Either way, the cigar to overwhelm the whiskey or the whiskey to overwhelm the cigar.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. Anything, and when you get too proofy on things, and I admit if I'm not smoking anything, I am duly a high proof whore, as they to say. I like proof, but for smoking, I think there's a range. It just if you get beyond that, it's going to get too overwhelming, or it's going to overpower your cigar or pipe, or it's just not going to be in balance, I guess. And it's all about balance is really what it should be. And that's kind of where I strive to. If I'm doing a cigar blend, I want to find balance in the proof. I don't want to get too high anymore. I don't want to get too low either. Just kind of, like within a very comfortable range.
Something else too, I've come to realize probably in the last year or so is if your tobacco is well aged, you also need lower proof. Like the longer the tobacco ages and kind of softens, if you have too high proof, we got together and we drank a bunch of high proof bourbons, stuff we've been saving, a group of us, and things like, President's Choice and just a bunch of different high proof bourbons. And we had a Hinky Kellner 80th anniversary, and the tobacco was well aged. And the tobacco is so soft and delicate that those high proof bourbons, it just totally took away from the cigar. And we realized we messed up about halfway through. I was like, you know what? As much as we were all excited to get together and like open up these bottles, this was not the right cigar for that. This was a delicate. So the next time I smoked that cigar, I actually had it with nothing to drink at all. And it was such a more pleasant experience because it was just the tobacco was so well aged and soft that it just needed to be on its own. Or, maybe a glass of wine probably went fine with it. Maybe even a cocktail, but, straight higher proof bourbons just totally overwhelmed that delicate cigar. So.
Oh, I so get that. That's with the traditional cognac or brandy cigar blends, those are going to be maybe 80 proof, or maybe 84 or 86 at most. That the flavor component in that, and the fatty acids and the fruit and everything is so intense that you don't miss that proof. If you try a traditional cigar blend against a pipe or a cigar, you're going to find that actually the flavor component is so intense you're not going to miss the proof. And that's the thing about bourbon and rye whiskeys too, is that we kind of but because again we don't have that kind of ester profile or fatty acid profile in the initial distillate, that we kind of have to go up higher in proof in order to get the same kind of flavors. And so I just said, FYI, I challenge anyone here to try some, like a very traditional cognac cigar blends, like a cognac frappin or Hein, or there are a number of things out there. But if you taste that lower proof brandy against, or pair it with the Piper cigar, you're going to find that it stands up beautifully to it. And it's all about getting back to the fat issue and the ester profile. But that's
what I bet would be a fun evening if you had like a well-aged cigar that was well kept in humidor, that was some older tobacco to begin with, and then kept for a long period of time, and had some vintage whiskeys with it that were that, like you said, that lower proof but kind of higher fatty acid profile. I bet that'd make for a really fun evening to sit and enjoy those whiskeys paired with that cigar, that 86 to 90 proof with well-aged tobacco that was soft and not overly spicy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a cool experiment.
Yep. Yeah.
Marty, I think you should make it happen for us.
Shit, man. Hellfire. But Jonathan,
for our round 2 event.
yeah, no kidding. We got to do something. We got to do a blending night, something, you know.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I think I've gone through tasting notes. I've got my book right here. Just to tell you, the other night we were texting. I guess it was Wednesday night before I went back to Tennessee. You were outside smoking, and I was doing the same. And I thought the closest I could come to batch 15 was batch 9. That's where that leather note for me on batch 9 just kind of popped. I think they're close, but I think the overall mouthfeel, I think the overall vanilla cream on batch 15 beats it out. So I think right now batch 15 is definitely in my top 3 of the blended straight bourbon whiskeys right now. So I think you got it going, man. I think you did good on this one. Not that you haven't before. I just think this one with that 36% rye, is that right? 36% rye is in this blend?
Well, so batch 15, there's 1 barrel of 36, and then the other 9 are actually anywhere from 10 to 21. But I think we've kind of found. I think I've kind of found like my sweet spot of flavor profile, like Nancy said, kind of my house style of that 8 to 12 year bourbon, anywhere from that 10 to 36% rye, and just those layers. I'm really happy where I've gotten batch. The last couple for sure, 14, 15. So I see the question from Hack and Mac. So we typically try to run about 6 different distillery and mash bill combinations, right? So some might be the same distillery, but different rye percentages, secondary grain. But usually out of those 10 barrels, there's about a half a dozen different distillery mash bill combinations in there. Yeah. And I think that's part of what makes, I think there's a couple things that make KLuke special. One, we source from 8 different distilleries, giving you about a half a dozen different blend combinations. But I also think because it's a male and female palate, because me and my wife don't always agree as we're going through the blending process, and saying, okay, what do you like? What do I like? Why do you like blend 6 that you're trying compared to blend 9?
Yep.
What I think was missing that you think it offered, and vice versa. As I go through and blend these products, and we're both excited about, and that's why I know it's something special.
So, like, I got a question up here, Marty. What are your other top ones? The ones that come to mind. I mean, like, I'd have to put them all together again because I'm such a toasted junkie when it comes to KLuke. I think that might be where my profile just kind of falls with those. But for me, I think right now it's basically 5, 6, 9, 12, and 15. I mean, that's a shit ton. I understand that, but I think when if you put those together, I think you find a consistency with that vanilla icing. You get that leather note. You get probably the peach ring again, and I think the spice with those are all very consistent. That's kind of what my brain goes back to, is the spicy finish. And I think all those are fantastic with even if you want to do a dark wrapper cigar, I think those are fantastic with that. I don't think the spice on the KLukes on those batches overpower a heavier, bold cigar. So for me, that's just kind of what I do. So, I mean, Jonathan will tell you, anytime I go outside and it's a KLuke bottle and I've got a cigar, I send him a picture of both and he'll respond, yeah, man, tell me what you think, kind of thing. So, yeah, batch 6, Gandy, is a banger. For sure. Toasted rye batch 5 is just another level. I agree, Hack. It's very good. Nancy, do you have any of the toasteds?
I don't think I don't. No. I've got batch 15, I've got batch 14, I've got batch 5, and I've got the Liquor Barn Kentucky.
That's Armagnac.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I can ask a quick question.
Sure, I'll be right back.
So, Jonathan and Nancy, you both source from, numerous different distilleries. How do you feel about when some distilleries, I'm just going to use Bardstown Bourbon Company for an example, where they have full disclosure on the side of the bottle, well, almost full disclosure, where they give states and mash bills and all that kind of stuff. How do you feel about that? In your world of, sourcing and blending and so forth?
I don't know if you want to take that first or not, or I can take it. Yeah.
Either way's fine. So, here's my good and bad. I mean, obviously, I know people want to know as much as they can about the blends, but my problem with once you know where the base whiskey is coming from, you automatically assume it's going to taste like X, right? Because you're like, okay, well, if it's wild turkey, I'm expecting this flavor profile. And my goal is for you, when you taste KLuke, to have no idea where the distilleries are from, because again, those are all the separate ingredients, and I want you to taste this harmonious blend. And I never want you to be able to pick out what distilleries or mash bills or ages are in the product. Because to me, that's part of the journey. That's part of the magic of what I get to do is to create something special, create these blends for me and Jennifer to taste, and then hone these in to be the final products. So I know people want to know, but for me, it's like, well, it kind of takes away some of the fun of, if you know one batch has more 13% rye, you're automatically thinking, oh, it's wild turkey, right? Well, it's like, well, that's not really true, because Bardstown also runs 13% rye. You know, you've got Heaven Hill runs all these different mash bills. You've got all these different things. But once people see something in black and white on the side of the bottle, they automatically assume it's this. It's going to be this flavor profile. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want you to be, like Nancy said, I don't want to put words in your mouth of thinking this is going to taste like this because it comes from here, or it's this age, or it's this tier, or it was aged by a window, or, you know, whatever million factors it could be. I want you to taste KLuke and say, wow, this is really exciting. And I love the whiskey in my glass. And I'm not so worried about the distillery age or mash bill. That's my goal on what I do. So that's my outlook on it.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Jonathan. That I feel so on par with that. And so for the distilleries, you know, like Joseph Magnus or 7-3 distillery in New Orleans, where I'm sourcing from, I kind of feel like I can have 12-year-old bourbon, for example, but if what I have to work with came from a bottom floor, and and that bottom floor was very humid and cool and such, that might taste like an 8-year-old at that point. Now, I mean, I usually try and kind of blend things out to where that I don't have a certain taste, or a bottom floor youthful taste if I can help it. But that said, sometimes you're when you're sourcing, you're kind of at the mercy of that, so I don't necessarily want to display that or it's that's just where it's coming from naturally. It's in an agricultural product, and also it's just an FYI for Joseph Magnus. We originally were distilling our own distillate. I don't know how many people know that, but I made the kind of executive decision to source pretty much exclusively from MGP, because the original distillery in the 1890s, I'm pretty sure, was getting their whiskey from what's now MGP, and that distillery, Ross and Squibb, or whatever you want to call it, opened in 1857, I think, and so I've and it's just like upriver. You go from Lawrenceburg, Indiana, up to Cincinnati. You're going up the Ohio River, and where the original Joseph Magnus distillery was. So I've always felt very comfortable in sourcing historically from that distillery. But that said, God, I'm sorry. I just
No, we're following.
my thought, but that said, I just always want to make sure that I'm not so married to the age as I am to the maturation profile, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. You can have, like if, we've discovered you can have spirit aging in Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, that tastes much more mature, at 5 years old than spirit at 8 years old or 9 years old in Wisconsin or Missouri Minnesota, or, those northern tier states. So just putting an age statement in itself on a label kind of limits you to what's possible, if that makes sense. And it's not that we want to, at least in my case, I don't want to on social media, on Reddit or anything else. When people ask me the age, I'm always totally transparent about what the actual age is for a batch. But on the label, I don't necessarily want that kind of constriction, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you're not trying to hide behind it. You're trying to get people to realize that there's so many variables that, that
right.
People get so caught up on like these specific facts. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. 8-year-old barrel from here to there is totally different compared to a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 6-year-old. I mean, there's so many other variables. People get so caught up on like these 4 things. I'm like, in our world, there's 1,000 choices. There's not 4 black and white answers,
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're not trying to hide it. You're trying to eliminate bias.
Eliminate bias. How is the whiskey in the glass? And my whole thing is, do you trust me as a blender? Do you trust KLuke as a brand? I know early on, if I saw something from Texas, I'm like, I don't think that's for me. Still, Austin comes out and I see Nancy's involved. I'm like, okay, well, if you're putting your name behind it, I know there's going to be something here that I want to try, right? So long before I met Chris Seals and just knowing you were involved made me want to go out and try that product because I trusted you as a blender. And that's my goal, is to get people to trust me as a blender and trust the brand and trust what Jennifer and I do, rather than the hard facts specifically listed on the bottle. Same way I felt about picking barrels. I picked all of them blind. I was never chasing, age or proof or stats. I was always picked them on, if I'm going home and drinking bourbon, this is what I want to drink. And if you believe me, you want to go home and drink it also. And that was always my goal.
Yep.
So.
I love that.
We got 8 minutes left. We're going to kill the stream.
All right.
Last chance to get in the giveaway. We've had these legends on for almost 3 hours, which is unheard of. If I know Nancy, she's got a pot pie in the oven ready to go.
Well, no, I don't have pot pie tonight, but I'm going to order some pizza tonight. So
okay,
I do want to just riff on what you're saying, Jonathan. That I think you're just so spot on. That it's less about people get so like married to age. And it totally depends on the maturation environment, and all those things that you mentioned before. And at the end of the day, it's said the ultimate test to me, is it good? Is it any good? If you don't like it, okay, well, maybe that's not right. But does it taste good, where it was matured? And I know in Texas, like at still Austin, and back when I was still, I haven't worked with the Iron Root Republic in about 6 or 7 years, but we were always trying to retard maturation to just kind of slow things down, kind of
distracted.
take it easy, because things really get, accelerated, and it's that's it's all about, at the end of the day, do you like what you pay? Just a quick note to Harold Dossett. He's enjoying a Pays Haut, distilled in 1994, bottled in 2018. I know that distillery well, my friend, and Armagnac comes from the Terroir, and it's probably also from Union Blanc. So anyway, just a beautiful expression, and sorry, I just said, I'm a Armagnac Musketeer, which is kind of like the equivalent of a Kentucky Colonel, or a what's the thing in Scotland, the Order of the or the Quaish, or however you pronounce it. So anyway, I always have to kind of give my Armagnac. Found on, but anyway, that's fun.
Toby, you had a question, and we'll close it out with that and give some whiskey
we'll
away.
kind of wrap it up with this question. So the rumor on the street is there's been a bit of a downturn in the bourbon consumption, and so we see a lot of distilleries, especially our big legacy distilleries, with an abundance of barrels. As two people that source barrels, what do you think that means for you going forward? And I happen to think that going forward, you guys are in a sweet spot, because a lot of these distilleries are going to have some fantastic product, thousands, millions of barrels, whatever it is, available, and probably not at too crazy pricing. What do you think that means for you? And what do you think this downturn means, in general, for the future?
Well, that's, I don't know if you want to take that verse.
Is that too big a question for too much whiskey?
No,
my perspective is brands that have done the right things, that are high quality, that are people you can really believe in, that are blending or bottling because of the love of the whiskey, are going to be just fine. And I still don't think there's nearly as much doom and gloom as people think there is. Obviously, you have to look at COVID inflated numbers, people being home, but I still don't think whiskey sales are below what they were pre-COVID. At least last time I saw numbers. So I think people that are doing it for the right reasons, like Nancy said earlier, people that are truly passionate about their whiskey, will be just fine. I think people that figured, like anything else, this is easy money, everyone's drinking, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon, buy some 4 and 5 year old whiskey, throw it into a bottle with a fancy package, and it's going to sell no problem. Consumers don't know any better, they're going to buy it and collect it. I think those brands are in trouble. And I also think people that spent, millions of dollars growing too big, too fast, I think those people are probably going to be in some trouble. I think for the rest of us who are really passionate about what we do, I think we'll be just fine. And I do think there'd be some opportunity to find more depth in whiskey, whether it be through age or just variety of distilleries, mash bills. And I think people are being more selective about what they're buying. They're not looking for the latest and greatest. They're not looking for all the trendy things out there. They're looking for more people they can believe in to buy consistent quality products, whether it's $50 a bottle or $100, $150 a bottle. You want consistent quality that it's going to be good every time you pull the cork on a bottle. It's going to be something special.
Yep. And
I think those brands will be just fine. So that's my outlook on it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jonathan. I kind of think with the inflation, having increased, and kind of keeping up with inflation, and this kind of the cost of living and such, I think people are going to go more to quality, and maybe not quite as much due to just experimentation and such, but I think having something that's consistently good is really going to go a long way over time. I think eventually, we'll kind of, things will kind of right itself. But I kind of feel like that the bourbon industry was kind of overinflated for a while, and that there were just like so many new things out there that and in a sense that's not bad, but when you have too much choice, it just kind of becomes overwhelming. I think kind of the how shall I say it, the cream will rise to the top.
Okay. So one final question with the cream rising to the top. If there was any one distillery that the two of you would think that we should all be looking at that has nothing to do with, Maizano or Fraley, what is that one distillery?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know.
That is, yeah.
And there's so many great operations
It
out
can be
there.
Legacy, it can be some dude making bathtub whiskey. I don't care.
I'm probably going to go a little bit more legacy, and I'm going to just name two, if that's okay with the legacy.
All right, go for it.
Yeah.
So I've been a Buffalo Trace fan for a long time. Both of what they put out with their antique collection, and also just what they put out as the base, and with their experimentation. And I really appreciate the kind of the science that they put behind things, like with the Warehouse X, for example, that I want to say that's like 10 years old now, and that's been around for a few moments. I think that those kind of brands are going to be just fine. And also, I'm a turkey head. Gobble gobble.
You can't go wrong with turkey.
Yeah, I agree.
For whatever, I like. I'm a rye fan. It's it's small grain. I like rye's my small grain. I think that those two are going to be just fine. I'm sure others will as well, but I just I like my wild turkey, and I like my Buffalo Trace. And with Buffalo Trace, that has been a personal inspiration for the work I've done over the years. So anyway, I'll hand it over to.
All right, Jonathan, take us out, buddy.
Yeah, I talk about it all the time. I'm a big Four Roses fan. I love the combination of different yeast strains, mash bills, rye percentages. So for me, with KLuke, I've always aspired to be like Four Roses, small batch jelly, combination of different distilleries. Well, for them, it's yeast strains, mash bills. I do that by sourcing from different distilleries. Four Roses Small Batch Limited Edition has been one of my absolute favorite products the last decade. I'm a big fan of Brent. I really enjoyed working with Jim over the years, but Brent is like just so down to earth, personal. I got to spend time with him 2 weeks ago. He always makes the point to come out and find me when I'm at an event that we're at together and taste my whiskey. And then for me also, Wild Turkey. I mean, what Jimmy and Eddie have done there, just the family tie-ins now with Bruce being third generation. Love the products, love the people even more. So those are my top two for sure.
That's awesome. I love those answers, and not one of them did I expect.
It's a good time.
I did not expect.
Good time to give away some whiskey with those answers,
Let's
guys. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 killer giveaways tonight. Thank you, Hack, for throwing in the Nancy April 2026 bourbon. That's a banger. We've got KLuke batch 15. We've got a Still Austin cast strength rye. We've got a mega sample pack of 8 different KLukes from the hack again.
Nice.
Awesome, guys. Let's bring up the wheel and we will give some whiskey away. If I can find the damn wheel. There we go. Share. What a killer wheel, man. So we're going to give away the Still Austin cast strength first. Nancy, since that is your baby, how many times should I shuffle?
Oh boy. God, I'm going to say 44. I've got a reason behind that. 44.
Jesus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that's good. Here we go.
That's Nancy's age. She's 44.
God, I so wish.
Mike Turner.
Damn.
All right, number 1.
All right.
Mike Turner.
Same question to you, Jonathan. We're going to give away the KLuke batch 15 bottle I've got. It is unopened, by the way. How many times should I shuffle?
How about 7?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Guys, you're going to get a banger of a
All right.
peachy ring, vanilla ice cream, leather bomb.
I can't wait to get this bottle.
Yeah, man, it's fantastic. Sean.
Woo! All right.
Holtgrave?
All right, cheers.
On Holtgrave?
Well done. Well done.
All right. Let's see, Toby, we're going to give away the Still Austin April 26th release. How many times?
5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you, Hack, for this donation. Hack and Mac, guys, get over there and sub if you haven't yet.
Great people in the whiskey world.
Harold.
Whoa.
Well done. Congrats.
All right. The last one will be, and I will call 10 on the shuffle. This is for the mega sample pack of 8 different KLukes from the hack. 8. There we go. Guys, email me whiskeynose21@gmail.com and I'll get the information sent. John Cloud.
Woo! All right.
Nice.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Well
Awesome.
done.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. All right. Hey, I'm going to see Harold. I can just give it. Hey, that's even better. Love it.
Great.
Ricardo, cheers, buddy. Thanks, man. Thanks for everybody that joined. This is epic. Like I said, congrats, John. Congrats to all the winners. Next week is a down week. Whiskey Nose will take a week off. He got like 3 emails Thursday night from his liver saying, hey, man, it's time to let up. Nancy and Jonathan and Toby are coming on, so we need a break. I've not had a drink in 4 days, so kind of prepared for this. But next week will be a down week. The following week will be a very, very busy week for Whiskey Nose and, of course, Legends of the Oak. I'll give a quick update before we head out. The following week, we will be doing a live stream with Old Glory. Me and Toby, Adam, Travis, probably Dave Vogelsang, and the guys from Old Glory will be on. We've got a ton of samples we need to go through. I actually have a single barrel bottle to give away on that stream. We will do that. And then that Thursday night, I will be in Kentucky with Toby, Corvette Trey, Randall. I'm not sure. I think that's
Roger, not Randall.
Oh, I'm sorry, Roger. I haven't seen Randall tonight. He needs to get his shit together, by the way.
Randall, that boy's working his ass off.
Yeah, so. I know. He's trying to get caught up, especially with the government. So, but yeah, we will be in Kentucky and we'll be on with Bourbon and Balls that Thursday night.
Yeah.
So another great channel, guys. If you haven't up there, we'll do that.
Yes.
We're gonna do some samples and some tasting with those guys.
Well, this guy is going to be curating a blind for Marty and the two guys from Bourbon and Balls, Charlie and his buddy. And I'm going to do a distillery blind, and I'm going to pick. I've just got to pick a distillery or an NDP. Yeah, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Let's pick
and
KLuke and cigar blends. Let's just do that.
Yeah, there you go. And
so let's not
but
around.
it's. I've been buying sample bottles, by the dozen. So it's going to be quite a night.
So, but yeah, that's the plan. And then May is wide open. We'll see what happens. I've got some things trying to get lined up for the group. But Jonathan, it's about time me and you got our asses together. It's been probably 3.5 years, 4 years since we've been sampling and doing this stuff. And it's about time we got together. I mean,
make it happen.
I just want to go ahead and apologize for Nancy. She's just kind of out there, man. I mean, she's related to me. It's weird. I know. She does the best she can all the time. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes, but Nancy, I love you. And thank you for your time.
Yeah.
And guys, if you haven't picked up on KLuke yet, don't waste your time. Just get on it. I mean, Nancy will tell you, this is her first go with this stuff. And I think she was impressed with everything Jonathan has done. And I think it's for the money. I think it's a buy all day. That's just my 2 cents. And I've been reviewing it now for over maybe 3 years.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. So Jonathan is always taking care of me and my channel. Yeah. And I am great.
Everybody, KLuke is a no-brainer. Hack said it earlier in chat. It's like, you see it, you buy it. It is, and that's not a sales pitch. It's one of the very few things that it's just like, oh well, 15's out, I'm buying it. 16's out, I'm buying it. Whatever.
Let me throw this out there too, especially for me and Toby, like kind of what we do for our community is like, guys, if you don't want to pay shipping, just reach out to us because we can sometimes, most of the time, find these bottles. We'll help you. I mean, I know that's sometimes
we'll hand deliver it.
Yep. Well, sorry. We'll hand deliver this stuff to you when we see you. So don't let that be a downturn by any means on these several releases. I mean, the rye's coming for 2026. The toasted barrel's coming in 2026, and there'll be multiple of the bourbons. So 10 barrel blends, man, you can't beat this shit at 118 proof.
On the flip side, if anybody's looking for Tanager from Nancy, well, shit, all bets are off.
Yep.
It's all every man for himself, every woman for themselves, whatever. Yep. And there you go. I want some of that. I get it first. You can have my.
We'll drink Marty's.
Yeah. This is gonna be part of your care package, Marty.
All right. The thing is, when Nancy sends that, I have to wait
I know.
Till November to do the 3 reviews. So you know what? That's not a problem I'm, worried about. So
I'm a terrible cousin.
No, you're not.
You're busy.
You're not. Yeah, really.
Yeah, and anybody looking for KLuke right now, batch 15 with seal box selling out so quick. The Whiskey Library in DC. If you go to our website, you can see the link to their online store. We're in 8 states currently, so sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media, and we'll let you know when the latest and greatest is going on. If you're looking for the Liquor Barn Armagnac, if you reach out to me, I can figure out which liquor barns still have some before it's all gone.
Yeah.
So thank you for enjoying what we do, and Nancy, it was great to spend the evening with you. Huge fan of what you do and what you offer for the whiskey community. So
yep.
I so enjoyed spending this time with all of y'all, but Jonathan, this was an absolute pleasure to actually be able to kind of, two master blenders to kind of, talk shop tonight. It was a lot of fun for me.
I look forward to getting to enjoy some pours with you in person one of these days.
Yes, sir. I'm
out there.
100% on board. Maybe when I'm down in Louisiana back in at 7-3, we can, we're close enough. We might be able to make that happen.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Luca, and he loves the brand. So let me know. I'd love to come hang out with you guys.
Here's the best comment of the night, Jonathan. Here's the best comment of the night.
Yeah, Batch 13.
Yep.
No batch 13 yet.
If you find it, buy them all, Hack.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then figure out who blended that whiskey.
Yep.
Yeah,
All right,
you know,
guys.
I think Hack and Mac, I think I saw that on Unicorn. You know, so hey, you know, go searching on Unicorn and find some batch 13.
I'm flying to Texas next week, so I'll see those guys in person out there.
Oh,
Let Nancy give you let Nancy prepare you. I'm just saying, you know, hey.
Oh, and I just said, FYI, for the future, I'm next month on May 3rd, I'm headed to the UK to
nice.
live a lifelong, or well, a 20-year dream of getting to blend with Compass Box whiskey.
Oh,
Wow.
One of my best friends is the new master blender at Compass Box, Angela D'Orazio, and all I can say is we've got plans. We are gonna out some shit. So,
And we all know that Nancy loves her pot pies, so she's going to the land of shepherd's pie and cottage pie and I mean, it's going to be. I mean, just you know.
well, I'm like 75-85% Brit, so you know,
That's funny.
yeah.
So am I. Didn't see that coming.
well,
I'm like 98%. Yeah.
The genes, I guess.
As you see the color for me and Nancy, it's just, you know, that's just kind of the way that works. So
Marty and I, and I'm sorry, cuz I'm going to embarrass you as I always do. We're related on both sides of my family, on my dad's
and I
side.
apologize for that. And please, guys, continue to buy the blends Nancy does, even
know
though
what?
she just said that comment. It doesn't matter.
I don't think that was surprising to anybody.
We're so Appalachian. It's
Yeah, see how she corrected that? She knew the right term.
I
She
did.
knows the Knoxville term. She knows the Lebanon term. She knows the King's term. All right, guys. Thank you all for watching, guys.
Hey, Jonathan, whiskey's or Nancy, stay around for a secon.
Yeah,
but
y'all
Marty,
hang for just a second.
I'm good
Guys,
here.
thanks for watching. Like I said, next week is a down week. I may do some video. I've got a shit ton of stuff to catch up on. So we'll see if we can get some videos out with work and everything. It's busy time for us, but hey, this is what I love. Guys, like I always say, man, thank you all for watching. This has been an epic stream. Thanks for promoting it, everybody that did it out there. I don't have anything in the glass, but yeah. Anyway, guys, like I always say, whiskey may not solve all your problems, but it's worth a shot. We'll see you all right
Solve
here.
a lot of them.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.